The hero asked himself what had happened to him. He tried to move his hand. The hero thought that his body did not move. A girl approached him. He asked himself who she was. A sign with his data appeared in front of the hero. He had no name, but he was a man. The level was the first of endless levels. The characteristics were not developed. The hero asked himself why his name was missing. He saw that he had the first level. The hero asked himself whether he had really been reborn as a child. He asked himself where he was. The hero asked himself if this beautiful woman was his mother. He thought his mother must have been an annoying old woman with a big mouth. The man said he had a beautiful face. The mother replied that the child's mouth looked just like his mouth. Mom called the man His Majesty. The king smiled. The hero asked himself, what did she call the man His Majesty? The king said his name would be Noah. On the tablet the name changed to Noah Ararat. The hero asked himself what the name had changed. Someone asked the king what Noisama's position was. The king replied that he was his son, so of course he was a prince. Someone said that he had an affinity for water magic. The king replied that if it was water magic, he would become the Lord of Almeria in the future. The hero thought that his status had begun to change. The inscription water appeared, next to which was the letter E plus S. He asked himself what A plus meant. Someone shouted that it was SS level water. Another subordinate shouted, asking what they meant, that he had already awakened. Everyone present was shocked. Someone shouted that it was brilliant. The hero asked himself what it was. Noah asked himself what it was for these people that they saw. Among the characteristics, only the line with the water skill had changed. SS was indicated next to it. Someone shouted that it was amazing. Another exclaimed that it was as expected of the emperor's son. The third added that this was the birth of a man with extraordinary talent. The emperor raised the child, showing him to everyone. The subordinates also raised their hands, praising the newborn prince. The hero thought that, at any rate, he was not a boy from the village. The hero looked at his name. His name was Noah Ararat. He became the 13th prince of the empire. The hero thought that he had been reborn as an aristocrat. It was sunny outside. They were in the palace. In the prince's room, there was a child lying on the bed. The grown prince sat on the edge of the bed. He stood up. The maid came to help him get dressed. Another maid came to the prince. They took off the prince's nightgown. The child was calm. The prince had heterochromia. One eye was darker and the other lighter. The hero thought that the maids changed his clothes every day when he got out of bed in the morning. At 6 years old, he was used to people seeing him naked, and it made his heart pound. The hero was just a village boy, and now he was of Imperial blood, his son, a prince. Noah lived in the great residence of the 13th prince, adjacent to the palace. The hero was in a position where he was the Lord of Almeria, home of the Water clan. During his 6 years of reincarnation, he had learned something. Others saw this skill as CC. To him, it looked like E plus S. The hero guessed that it seemed to depend on the number of servants. The hero thought that even now there was a slight increase in basic skills with dozens of maids, which meant that if he had more servants then he could become stronger than he was now. The maids were almost done. The hero remembered that before his reincarnation, his maximum level was 8. He thought that now he had changed. The hero thought that it seemed that his growth potential was unlimited. The maid adjusted the last detail of the prince's robe. One of the maids said that his clothes were ready. Another added that he was, as always, very handsome. The maids called the hero a master. The maid smiled. The prince was silent. The hero remembered the conversation between the maids. One of them said that Noisama was so amazing. Another replied that normal children his age were so mischievous, but he was always so calm and collected. One of the maids said that perhaps this was what was called the dignity of a ruler. The hero was unperturbed. The hero was sitting at the dining table. He was having breakfast. The maid addressed him as a master. She said that His Imperial Highness the Crown Prince and the 4th Prince had arrived. The girl added that they told him to finish his meals slowly and then meet them. The hero stood up and wiped his hands. He ordered the maid to show him the way immediately. There were guests sitting in the reception room. The hero knelt before the guests. He greeted his brother, Albert Alarat, the 2nd Crown Prince, exclaimed that he was here. Henry Ararat, the fourth prince, said that there was no need to be nervous. He added that he should just sit down. Albert said that Noah was as polite and wise as ever. He added that he could one day be a great chancellor. Henry agreed. Noah replied that he would do everything possible to become one. He asked his brothers what brought them here today. Albert replied that he had a small gift for Noah. The prince ordered it to be brought. The servant brought the box. It was obvious how heavy it was to carry the box. The servant held the box with great difficulty. Noah looked at the servant with a questioning look. The servant began to get nervous. He began to laugh nervously. Noah wondered what it was. The brothers looked at him. The servant lowered the box. The prince ordered it to be opened. The servant was nervous, but opened it. There was a sword in the box that gave off an ominous aura. Noah was surprised. Albert said it was a gift, so he had to take it. Noah took the sword in his hands with great difficulty. Albert laughed. He said it was expected. Noah asked what was going on. Albert replied that the name of the sword was Leviathan. He explained that the sword was also known as the water demon's sword. Albert told Noah that before he got his hands on it, about 120 people had died in the past. Noah was terrified. The hero laughed in a questioning tone. He tried to move the hand that held the sword. Noah thought it was dangerous because he was about to throw away a gift from the emperor. Henry said he didn't have to worry about that. He explained that when he wasn't holding the sword, he was cursed to death, but as soon as he held it. Henry paused. Albert asked that Noah had SS rank water, right? Henry replied that it was a demonic sword that even S rank people could handle. He was just curious about what would happen to someone who was SS rank. The brothers stood next to Noah. Noah was angry. He thought that he had let him hold the sword in his hand only for this reason. The hero had mentally insulted his older brother. He thought that it would be bad if it spilled out of his mouth. Albert said that most people couldn't even hold the box with him in it. He asked the servant if it was true. The servant said yes. He said that it felt like his whole body was freezing and it hurt like a needle. Albert said that he had seen many wonderful things in his time. The guests were about to leave. Albert apologized for disturbing him that morning. Noah was annoyed. Night fell. The moon shone brightly. Noah was in the bath with the maid. The girl was embarrassed to look at the naked boy. Noah asked Zoe what was the matter. The maid told the hero that he looked unwell. The maid began to apologize that he was not obliged. Noah interrupted her. He ordered her to just say it. The girl said that if he had a free minute later. Noah replied that she should say it now. The maid felt awkward. She said she was just wondering if she had any free time. The maid paused. Noah asked why she wanted to leave. The maid replied that her parents' farm had been washed away in an earlier flood. She went on to say that her mother, a single woman, could no longer afford to feed herself. The girl was sad. The maid said she was thinking of going to the red light district, to a brothel. The girl continued that she was going to sell her services and take care of the master. Noah told her to stop. The girl looked down. Noah looked at her. He was a little irritated. The hero stood up. He said okay. Noah suggested to the girl that they bring her mother to the mansion. He said that he would ask her to guard the back gate. The hero added that they were going to give her 10 rin for this job. The maid raised her head. She asked him again. The girl said she had never heard of such a job. She went on to say that 10 rin was more money than any normal working man earned. Noah said that there was an empty house on the western outskirts. He was about to leave the bathhouse. Noah told her to use this place with her mother. The maid was surprised. The maid began to cry with happiness. The girl bowed to the prince. She thanked him loudly. Noah thought that if it was revealed that his maid was the girl who courted the prince and went to the brothel to sell herself, the 13th prince's name would be tarnished. He knew that what was worse was that the emperor might even reprimand him for his actions. They headed towards the exit of the bathhouse. Noah thought that since she was his servant, she would be his servant for the rest of his days. The hero thought that she would leave him when she died or when he himself threw her out. Noah thought that his servant had gone for a few dozen rins and being sold to a brothel was unacceptable to him. Noah called his butler Dylan. He asked the servant if he had heard of the early spring flood. The man replied that it was the one in Dasso. Noah ordered his butler to go and buy as much land as he could. The servant was surprised. Noah explained that after the flood, there would be many traders who, like Zoe's parents, would try to destroy their crippled home. He told Dylan to save them before they did. Dylan was about to say something, but the prince interrupted him. Noah asked if there were any problems. Dylan replied that he was surprised. He said that when Master Noah first encountered the flood, he foresaw it perfectly. Noah thought he had seen many such things before his reincarnation. Dylan continued that it would take about 500,000 rin to do this. The prince interrupted him again. Noah said he would give him the money, so now he had to hurry. Dylan smiled. Noah asked if he had anything else to say. Dylan thanked the prince. The servant bowed to him. Dylan was about to leave. Noah thought that, if he thought about it, Dylan was from around here too. There was a huge library in the palace. In the middle stood the emperor's table. Noah approached his father's table. He knelt down. The hero asked the emperor what he wanted to see him. The emperor was silent. It was the Mir's empire. The emperor stood up. He asked Noah how he was doing. Noah replied that everything was going very well. He added that he had tried his best every day. The emperor told the hero that it seemed he had bought a whole village. Noah began to worry. He asked himself how the emperor knew this. The hero thought that it was only a few days ago, and he did not even report it. The emperor told Noah not to look so surprised. He went on to say that he had not called him here to reprimand him. His father said that he had intended to do the opposite. He went on to say that he had been spared the trouble of cleaning up the mess caused by a combination of natural and man-made disasters. The emperor asked Noah how he knew about this. Noah replied that a girl from that village worked in the residence of the 13th prince. He continued that he heard that she was going to sell herself to a brothel because of the disaster. Noah added that it was a coincidence. The emperor said that it was also a blessing. He turned. The father explained that because if it had been Albert's domain, he would have been forced to check the mess 3 times. He said that whatever it was good work. The emperor told Noah to let him reward him. The emperor said that he believed that the 13th prince's allowance per year was 8,000 rin. He added that this was not much for Noah. Noah thought that the average annual income for a 30-year-old resident of the capital was 120 rin, so it was by no means a small sum. The emperor added that for now it was necessary to raise it by 1,000 rin. Noah thanked the emperor. His father called him by name. Noah raised his head. The emperor praised Noah. He added that the hero should continue in the same spirit. Noah answered positively. The weather was fine outside. Noah walked the streets of the capital of the empire, Mirs. The capital was the most prosperous city in the country. It was lively here. The hero looked around. He thought that people, goodness and money, everything came together here. Noah thought that there was a wide range of things to satisfy human desires. He realized that there was little he could do with the body of a 6-year-old child. Noah remembered how the eunuchs mentioned the singer in the market. He thought it would be worth checking. The hero went to the singer. Noah reached the tavern. He went in. The owner invited him to the table. A girl came out on stage. She started singing. Noah thought that her name was probably Alice. Noah continued to listen to this girl singing. The singer raised her hand. Everyone present listened to her with admiration. Noah sat at the farthest table. Noah smiled. He thought that was pretty good. Noah thought that her technique was still in the development stage, but he saw that she sang seriously and sincerely. The hero was sure that she was a serious girl. Someone shouted for them to stop. The man shouted and asked what she was singing there. The servant tried to stop the man, but the latter hit him. The servant fell on the stage with a crash. The man asked in a raised voice that she thought she could pay off her father's debts in this way. The girl tried to object. She was nervous. The man grabbed the girl by her clothes. He smirked. The man asked the girl how she knew she had something to earn money with, didn't she? The man stuck out his tongue and was about to touch the girl's face. The girl felt uneasy. She was humiliated. The audience was nervous. Someone tried to look away. The girl lowered her head. Noah was about to intervene. He called out to the offender. Someone looked at the boy with a surprised look. The offender turned and asked what was needed. He screamed that it was just a child. The offender screamed that the baby should have gone to play with his mommy. Noah replied that Article 67 of the Second Imperial Code. He said that no child should take on the debts of his parents. The hero continued that it was a crime to ask for the payment of a father's debt by selling his body. The bully grabbed the boy by the clothes. He screamed that the boy thought he could handle him. Noah took out the magic ball. The ball was a magical item called Splash. Noah knew that he could cast a spell regardless of the magic power, and the effect depended on the user's attributes. Streams of magic appeared from the ball, which scared the offender. Streams of magic attacked the offender and his friends. The offender screamed that his shoulder was injured. The audience was dumbfounded. Noah sat down. He asked the offender that he still wanted to continue. The offender and his friends quickly stood up and ran out of the tavern. They continued to scream in pain. People started clapping. Some were shouting that this boy was so cool. Some were shouting just bravo. Noah's face didn't even change. Noah turned to the servant who had been hit by the offender. The servant asked him what he wanted. Noah said that if they came again, he should have told them to come to him. The hero handed the servant his business card. The servant's eyes widened. The audience sat and whispered. The servant asked that he was a prince. People asked each other if it was really the prince. The singer was surprised. Noah picked up her hat. Noah handed the girl her hat. He said that the song was good. Noah asked the singer how much she earned per month. The girl thought about it. She said if you include her mother's medical bill. Noah interrupted her. He said 25 rin. The hero turned to leave. The girl was surprised. Noah said he would pay her every month so she should not worry and continue singing. He added that he would give her more when she got better. The girl thanked him loudly. Her face turned red. Noah smiled. He told the girl to let him listen to the rest. Night fell. Noah was returning home. He had a thoughtful look. People worshipped someone. People knelt before the palace gates. Noah saw them. He thought that one of them must be the boss of the guys who came for the money. The hero assumed that they seemed to know who he was. Noah entered the house. The maid spoke to him. She wanted to report about these people, but Noah interrupted her. He told her to send them away. Noah asked if anyone could just get an audience with the prince just because they wanted to. He wanted to say something else, but someone interrupted him. The guest said that it was a good decision. It was Henry. Noah cried out his name. Henry said that to accept such people lightly would be a disgrace to the royal family's reputation. Noah agreed. He said that today he had gone to hear a girl named Alice sing. The hero continued that these guys were supposed to collect her father's debt, so he had stepped in and gotten rid of them. Noah said it would be better if they thought he was still angry, and that they should not think of getting involved with Alice again. Henry was surprised. He exclaimed that he had thought of everything. Noah continued that if they thought he had forgiven them, they would contact her again. Henry said that made sense. Henry asked Noah how well she sang. Noah told his brother not to ask him. Henry sat down on the couch. He said he had something to tell Noah about this demon's sword. Noah answered positively. Henry began to explain. Henry said that this sword had a will. Noah stood before his brother. Noah asked him again. Henry replied that he hadn't said, but she definitely was. Henry continued that the difficulty was that it seemed to be rooted in the notion of hierarchy. Noah tried to say something, but Henry interrupted. He told his brother to think of it as a dog. Henry went on to say that before he took over, it was better to make it clear who was in charge. He said that it was better for both of them if he forced a concession. Noah said that was a long way off. He thought about it. Noah had a good idea. Noah ordered the servants to bring this demonic sword. The servant brought it. It was obvious how hard it was for him. Noah told the servant that it was hard for him, so he should go and rest. The hero took the demonic sword in his hands. Henry thought he was saying that it was a long way off, but he knew the truth. Noah was trying to move the sword. Noah thought he would prove it now. He was determined. Magical energy began to flow from the demon's sword. The energy grew more and more. Eventually, the energy completely engulfed Noah. Noah thought he would prove it right now. He turned the sword over and the tip of the sword scraped the floor. Energy continued to flow out of the sword. Henry was stunned. He said it was amazing. Henry said he brought him completely to his knees. Henry screamed for someone to show him Noah's status. One of the servants came and made the stat sheet appear. Noah smiled faintly. He told himself that he had thought so. Noah thought that being his subordinate wasn't just for humans. The chart said E plus SS. Henry said that was really awesome, at the age. Noah thought that no one but him would see that. The table said SSS. Henry laughed. He told Noah that at the age of 6, he already had the SSS water skill. Henry continued that he thought it was the aftermath of bringing that demon to his knees. Noah replied that it seemed so. He was still holding the hilt of the sword. To him it looked like E plus SS. Noah thought that, as he said, if he put the demon's sword on his knees, the water from S would become SS. He thought that if nothing changed. Noah said he would carry it with him. Henry said he should wait a few years, as his majesty and brothers were tall. He exclaimed that he, too, would soon grow up. Noah's gaze changed. He replied that it was true. The hero looked at the sword. Henry asked what was happening. Noah replied that he wanted to try something. Noah thrust his sword forward. He closed his eyes. The hero was determined. Noah stood like that for a while. The sword began to change in size. Henry was even more surprised. He asked Noah what he had just changed his size to. Noah replied that this guy had taught him that. Henry said it was unheard of. He explained that 200 years ago it had been isolated and kept as a national treasure, but nothing like this had happened. Henry added that it was truly amazing. Noah wanted to say something. Noah exclaimed that now he could carry it with him always. A maid came up to them. The maid apologized. She told Noah that he had received an invitation. The maid continued that the invitation came from the third vizier. She said that he was hosting a banquet at his residence. Noah asked what time it began. The maid replied that it was written that he could come at any time. Noah thought that meant that he was an honored guest. He understood that the banquet would officially begin when he arrived at the residence. Noah asked Henry what about him. Henry said that he would probably refrain, as he did not like noisy places. Noah said that he understood. Henry asked if he was going to go. Noah answered yes. They left the palace. Henry looked at the people standing in front of the gate. He asked his brother who they were. The leader of the bullies screamed that he couldn't stand it any longer. He screamed at Noah to stop being like that. His friends tried to stop him. Noah was about to draw his sword. Noah glared at him. The leader was shouting that he had had enough. His friends were still trying to stop him. One of his friends forced him to bow and apologize. Henry asked what he had done to him. Noah apologized to his brother. Henry didn't understand what was happening. Henry laughed. He said the bullying was intense. Henry added that he quickly got used to such things. His brother laughed again. A carriage arrived at the gate. Someone was standing at the gate. It was the third vizier, Jean Brad Rayduk. The man greeted Prince Noah. Noah thanked the vizier for inviting him. He asked that it seemed to be a pleasant evening. They walked down a long corridor. The servants opened the doors of the banquet hall. All the guests had already gathered there. People applauded the prince with admiration. The aristocrats stepped aside to allow the prince and the vizier to pass. The people whispered and continued to clap. Someone said it was His Highness the 13th Prince. Another noble exclaimed that he had such a dignified appearance, although he was so young. A third said that it was as expected of His Majesty's son. The vizier turned to the prince. He said that this object was on his waist. He had not seen it before with the prince. It was not there at their last meeting. Noah replied that it was a gift from His Highness the Crown Prince, known as Leviathan. The vizier cried out that Leviathan was a demon, a national treasure. Someone loudly asked what was from His Highness the Crown Prince. He was told that they said that the patrimony of the 13th Prince was in Imperial. Someone else added that he never thought he would see the national treasure. Noah thought that Rayduk knew that Leviathan was a demonic sword. Someone exclaimed that it was just a fake. It was a young aristocrat. Everyone looked at him. The young man felt uneasy. The young man was nervous. Noah wondered what he should do. People continued to whisper. The guests began to scream in pain. Noah was about to draw his sword. Noah told the sword that it was enough. People grabbed their bodies and screamed in pain. The aristocrats continued to scream and cry. This young man began to run away from the residence. Noah thought that maybe sitting was more appropriate. He told himself that he never thought Leviathan would be so angry that he would release so much killing intent. The vizier shouted that it was amazing. He added that it was as expected of His Highness. The vizier shouted, now everyone here equally smelled the smell of death. He continued that this was only the smallest power of national treasure. The vizier shouted that the greatness of His Highness the 13th Prince, who could control this overwhelming power. People started laughing. Someone shouted that it was amazing. Another nobleman exclaimed that there was so much power at such a young age. Noah sat on the chair and the nobles came to greet him. He thought that the simple greeting of the nobles followed after the incident. Noah looked at the father and daughter. He thought that these two were a little different. The man said it was a great honor to meet His Highness. He went on to say that his name was Byron Allen and that this was his daughter, Cindy. The aristocrat asked to be allowed to meet him. Noah asked the aristocrat that this girl was his adopted daughter. The vizier was surprised. He asked the prince if he knew this. Noah answered in the negative. He explained that he had understood this from some observations. The vizier said it was wonderful. He went on to say that he hoped that in the future His Highness would tell him why. Noah thought about it. He asked Alan if he was second or third generation. The nobleman replied that he had said it correctly. Noah said he assumed it was because of the way he acted. He was probably upper class, but this girl wasn't like that. Noah had a memory of his previous life. He saw the difference in how people behaved between the upper and lower classes. The vizier cried out that it was amazing. He told the prince that he was amazed at his insight. Noah added that the child he had adopted was a slave. The aristocrat asked what he had observed so much. The father and daughter were shocked. Noah thought it was because of the eyes. He knew that a person who had once been enslaved had special questions in his eyes. Alan said that he had bought this sweet girl from a slave trader, but she was different from the others, she was smart. He added that he had adopted her and taught her many things. Noah grinned. Noah said it was good. He smiled widely. Noah said that next time, he would invite them to his mansion. He added that he wanted to hear more about the girl. Alan was delighted. He answered positively. The man added that he would be happy to. The aristocrats were dumbfounded. The vizier told the prince that he had seen through everything. He added that it was amazing. Noah said that there was another reason why he knew she was not his biological daughter. Noah became serious. He explained that the way she responded to his bullying. The hero continued that she stood up to Byron to protect him when he used bullying earlier. Noah asked what girls her age were usually protected by. The vizier replied that he understood. He told the prince that he had seen it all from the beginning. The man continued that the prince had a broad outlook. The vizier exclaimed that he was truly delighted. But the sun was shining brightly outside. The maid told the prince that the third vizier had sent a token of gratitude. She asked what he was going to do. Noah thought it was supposed to be gratitude for attending the banquet. He knew that this, too, was one of the foundations of aristocratic relations. Noah put his cup on the table. He replied that it was customary to receive it. Noah thought that now that he had made this demonic sword obey him, it would be bad to rely on intimidation alone. He knew that he needed to be able to wield the sword itself, otherwise it would not look very good. Noah felt the sword's excitement. He asked the sword what it was excited about. The maid asked what he was talking about. Noah looked at the girl with a questioning look. He said that he had just thought of something interesting. The maid asked the prince again. Noah got up from the table and was about to leave the dining room. He told Zoe to just wait and see. The maid followed him. Noah went out into the yard. He stopped at the largest tree. Zoya stood a little further from him. Noah thought that his strength and speed were E or F, so he couldn't cut down that tree. He swung his sword. The tree was cut down. The trunk almost fell to the ground. Noah saw that he was able to cut down this huge tree. Zoe was amazed. She said that there was such a big tree, but he cut it down without much effort. Noah replied that it could not be done by simply strengthening himself. Noah thought that these were the movements of the former owners of Leviathan. He realized that simply by repeating them, he was able to cut it. The sword began to worry again. Noah was told about it by the sword. He thought it would make him look good. Noah noticed the sword's tremor. Zoe asked what this time? Noah asked what she knew it was right. He took out the magic ball. Zoe answered positively. She said it was a magical tool known as a surge, used to activate magic. Noah replied that it seemed like the sword could do the same thing. He continued that it didn't consume magic power, but it could only be used once an hour. Noah smiled. He offered the sword to them to try. Noah raised his sword above his head. Zoe thought that the gentleman seemed unusually excited. The tip of the sword was filled with magical power. Noah was about to strike. The sword moved as Noah directed. He was a little shocked, but did not stop the blow. The impact caused everything around to glow. Noah couldn't see anything. Magic waves spread across the backyard of the 13th prince's mansion. Zoe was thrown back by the wave. The girl fell. Noah stood and watched all this. There was a huge hole where the impact had occurred. Zoe was in shock. She said it was amazing. Noah said he managed to change its course, but he couldn't see the bottom at all. Noah told the sword that it was dangerous. It started to rain. In the bathhouse of the 13th prince, the water in the pool was hot. Zoe said that during the last training the master got dirty all over. She was so sorry. Another maid asked the prince if there were other places where the dirt was still there. Noah thought about it. He replied that everything was fine. Noah got out of the bath. He was sad. Water was running down his face. A maid came to the bathhouse. She told the prince that he had a visitor. The maid handed over a piece of paper that said it was Murray, the governor of the Hojui lands. Noah hadn't expected that. Noah thought his territory was about to get a promotion. The man stood in the reception room. The guest bowed before the prince. He said that he was the governor of the lands of Koja. The man apologized for distracting the prince. Noah told the guest to sit down. The man agreed. Noah asked Murray if this was the second time they had met. The guest answered positively. He said that a year and a half ago he had welcomed His Majesty as governor. Noah said that about the order of His Majesty. He asked the guest that he was ordered to switch to the hydroponic method. The earth was not used, but with the installation of a constant supply of water on the lands of Hadza. The man lowered his head. He replied that everything was correct. Noah thought that the lands of the Kadza were on the banks of a large river. Noah knew that there was fertile land there, suitable for a granary, but sometimes floods occurred, leading to disasters. The hero understood that His Majesty's idea was to eliminate the problems and create a stable granary. Noah thought that this was the purpose for which he had been appointed governor. Murray was from Almeria, where the Water Clan lived. Noah asked if everything was going well. The guest replied that the budget was being cut and there was a shortage of workers. Noah said he did not understand what was being discussed. He exclaimed that His Majesty had not given such orders. The man was nervous. He replied that if that was so, then for what reason was the Ministry of Finance? The guest fell silent. Noah stood up and was about to leave. The governor called him. Noah ordered the governor to follow him. The weather was fine outside. The palace was peaceful and calm. The prince sat in the room with the Minister of Finance, Maeve Rick, and the governor knelt down. The finance minister said it was such a sudden visit. He asked the prince for what purpose. Noah said he heard from Murray that the minister was cutting the budget. The minister exclaimed that he shouldn't worry about such things. Noah said that he should have explained what the matter was then. The minister looked down. The man said there was a serious reason for this. Noah interrupted him. He told the minister that if he was going to say that he was still a child and did not understand anything, then he should have shut his mouth now. The minister looked guilty. He looked at the prince. The man smiled falsely. He exclaimed that of course he would not do such ignorant things. Noah said that he had to explain then. The minister agreed. The man was about to eat a piece of meat. He said that Hojui had suffered from a flood last year. Noah turned to the governor. He asked what it was. Murray nodded. Noah asked the minister what next. The minister continued that at that moment His Majesty issued a decree to remove the tax from the lands of Koja for a whole year. Noah asked the governor if this was the case. The minister exhaled. The minister continued that there was a floating tax. He said the treasury believed that it could be used. The minister asked if he understood this. The governor did not dare raise his head. Noah asked the minister if he was joking with him or something. The minister loudly answered in the negative. Noah said that after the flood, His Majesty exempted him from taxes because. The hero fell silent. Noah added that there was a reason why taxes couldn't be removed. The minister's face changed. The governor was shocked. The minister replied that it was only a favor, but the main problem was here. He asked, so why not tell everything as it was? Noah asked the minister why he thought he was crazy. The minister continued to dine. The governor tried to object. The minister exclaimed that it was not so. Noah asked then what it was. The minister said that he really could not return the budget. Noah asked why. The minister said there was talk of building a new summer resort for His Majesty. He asked the prince if he was aware of it. Noah agreed that His Majesty was already quite old. He said that it was a summer house north of the capital, where it was getting hotter every year. The minister said that although this villa was to be used by His Majesty, he shouted that the same with the detached palace. Noah thought that even the history of His Majesty was to be criticized. The governor was dumbfounded. The minister continued to shout that there should have been more than just a villa. He got up from the table. The minister shouted that it was to be a city of about 5,000 people. He exclaimed that it would cost a huge amount of money. The minister was inspired. The governor closed his eyes. The minister continued to speak enthusiastically. The minister said that this was the reason why the budget had been reduced. The prince ordered him to shut up. The minister was shocked. He asked the prince what he said. Noah asked, that was a huge disrespect, right? The minister shouted that he did not dare. Noah was angry. He asked the minister that he was going to make a fool of the emperor. The minister tried to object and justify himself, but Noah did not allow him. The hero continued, asking that it was necessary to control the water in the area affected by the flood, but they could not get money from the treasury because they were building a villa. Noah asked the minister that he was proposing to make a fool of His Majesty in this way. The minister began to get agitated. He shouted that the prince was mistaken. The minister fell to his knees. He shouted that there had been some misunderstanding. Noah said that he should have returned the money then. Noah asked the minister what he wanted him to address directly to His Majesty. The minister shouted at his subordinates to immediately allocate a budget for Qadza. He shouted that this was a top priority, so they had to work on it now. The minister ordered them to hurry and do it quickly. The governor was shocked. Noah watched all this. The governor thought that this man, without moving a single step, had forced the Ministry of Finance to surrender. The minister was worried and wanted to carry out the prince's order quickly. The governor opened his mouth in surprise. The governor said he was impressed. He went on to say that the impetus for negotiations, the skillful speech, exploiting the weaknesses and mistakes of the opponent. The man said he was ashamed for asking His Highness for this position. Noah thought that the governor thought that he, the prince, was going to act violently in his own way. The governor bowed to the prince. He thanked the prince. Noah looked at him. The governor told the prince that he would return as soon as possible to improve the management of the lands. Noah agreed. Someone called out to the prince. The young man said that he had a message and he wanted to convey it to the Imperial Highness. He continued that His Majesty had summoned him. The young man asked to follow him. Noah asked the young man. The weather was fine outside. In the palace, the pigeons were flying. The emperor fed the pigeons at the fountain. Noah knelt before his father, saying that he had come in response to His Majesty's challenge. The emperor told Noah to go and make himself comfortable. Noah thanked the emperor. His father said that, first of all, he had done well. He explained that he was talking about Koja. Noah was surprised. He asked his father again. The emperor said that he heard how the prince defeated Maid Rick. Noah wondered how that was possible. He thought he had only recently left the treasury. The emperor had said that information was a weapon, so he must have had the habit of polishing it. Noah agreed. The emperor said he would repeat it again, that it was a good job. Noah objected. He said he had done the obvious. The emperor said that it was difficult to take the obvious for granted. He continued that there were many people who spoke well. The emperor added that, however, few could do for granted. He continued feeding the pigeons. The emperor walked up to Noah and stroked his head. His father said that he was only 6 years old, but he was already surprising. Noah's face turned red. The emperor smiled. Noah's demonic sword began to move. The emperor said that he had complete control over it, this Leviathan's sword. He continued that, given the disgusting history that followed, the emperor added that he had to say that it was amazing. The emperor thought about it. He said that he had to make Noah master of the sword, a master of fencing. Noah looked at his father. The emperor ordered Noble to be called. A knight came out into the courtyard. Noah looked at the stranger. The stranger said that Damien Noble had come as ordered. The emperor told the knight that he knew about Noah. He went on to say that he wanted him to teach him how to use a sword. Noble agreed. He said he would do his best. The emperor said that it was a nobleman's sword. The emperor said that in the empire, as the people said, he was a swordsman who had no equal in handling the sword. Noble knelt. He said it was a great honor. The emperor told Noah to be encouraged by Noble. Noah agreed. Noble suggested to the prince that they get straight to business. He was about to draw his sword from its sheath. Noble said he would see what the prince had to offer. Noah looked at him. Noble added that he wanted to confirm. The emperor said he was a child who had not been taught. Noble told the emperor to be sure he was not looking for skill, but only character. The emperor thought about it. Noah wondered if he could be convinced so easily. He wondered if it meant that he trusted so much. Noah was about to reach for his sword. Noah became serious. He was ready to fight. Noble called Noah His Highness. The man was serious. Noble told Noah to attack him from anywhere. The opponents stood opposite each other and were ready to fight. Damien looked at the boy sternly, hoping that he could attack him from different positions. Noah confidently looked up at the man and gave him a positive answer. The hero immediately went on the attack, jumping up. Damien prepared for the attack and raised his sword above his head. Noah's blade made a loud clang when it collided with the enemy's sword. Damien frowned and raised his head. He noticed how the position of Noah's hands changed. Noah changed the direction of his sword and swung at Damien again, but the knight exclaimed that he would do it and pressed his blade with all his strength. Despite his efforts, his sword flew out of his hands as the Noah swung his blade to the side. Before His Majesty's eyes, Damien's sword flew high into the sky and spun in the air several times before firmly stabbing the ground with its sharp end. Damien's hands trembled. Damien seemed to be in shock. He looked at his palms with surprised and confused eyes. Noah continued to watch the man closely. The king was as surprised as he was and could not find words. Damien came to his senses a little and turned back to where his sword had fallen. The man took a deep breath. Damien asked for forgiveness from His Majesty, and said that he would not be able to teach His Highness. With these words, he knelt before the king. The king did not understand what this meant and asked for an explanation. Bowing his head, the man said that His Highness's strength and speed were still at a child's level. But his sword skills had reached the level of a master. He took the sword from him with a single technique, and it was his complete defeat. The king's face was at first frozen in surprise. He looked at his son with his mouth open, and then laughed loudly. He explained to him that it was amazing. Damien sighed and said that he was indeed the son of His Majesty. The king clapped his hands and fully confirmed his words. From now on, Noah will be the head of the selection at the nightly selection. Such a sudden promotion surprised the guy. Damien agreed with the king's order and said that His Highness was the best person for the position. The selection of a knight is a great annual event of the empire. The term empire on Earth meant their empire, and although no one else called it that, the original official name was the Empire of the Mears. Mears is an old word meaning warrior. In other words, the Mears are a land of warriors. The empire had a tradition of valuing warriors. It was even said that military service was the only way to achieve a successful career. The people who were able to go further than all the empires fought in the imperial capital. The winner was given the title of knight, and they immediately joined the ranks of the upper class. This decided the choice of the knight. The guy was surprised that he would be a judge at this event. His surprise gave way to a barely noticeable smile. The hero knew that this would be convenient for him. The knight who wins the selection becomes the subordinate of the selection judge. Noah glanced at his status window. All his stats were at frang. For some reason, he also had a unique ability. It depended on his subordinates and the people in the territory, and it needed to be accumulated. Noah bowed to His Majesty and promised to do his best. In other words, if he has strong subordinates, then he himself will be able to become stronger. The king replied that in that case they would have to make one decision. He asked Noah about his choice. In the league and in the tournament, people's methods of survival were completely different. Noah replied that he wanted all the qualifiers with the entire empire in the imperial city. He wanted it done right in front of him. The king was confused and asked why he made such a decision. The empire was large, and with such a big event like this, the hero would not be able to fully control it locally. Losing a talented person over a trifle would be strange. Noah would like to see the talent of their warriors. The king understood everything and grinned at the boy with delight. He agreed with his decision and said that he would leave it to him. After their conversation, Noah went into the royal hall, where he sat down at a long table. A maid approached him and handed him a cup of tea with a smile. The boy took the tea and asked Zoya if there was a candidate from her village to choose a knight. The girl happily agreed. She said that this was the only way for them, ordinary people, to climb the career ladder. One such person came from her village every year. The hero thought about the fact that this year he got rid of local qualifications, and now any number of people can come. For some reason Zoya became quiet and lowered her head. The hero noticed the strange behavior and asked what was wrong. The maid exclaimed that she was very sorry, but Noah asked her not to apologize. He simply asked her to answer what she was thinking about. The girl replied that the only candidate from her village was not selected for the qualifying selection. The reason for this was the cost of travel and very high living expenses in the capital. In the village, everyone gathered because this situation affected one person. The hero looked at the girl in surprise. Zoya said that if everything went well, she would be able to live up to the village's expectations, because the chosen person was very good. She was going to do everything possible for this. The hero thought that in this case, talent would most likely be overlooked. Because of the pressure, they would not be able to show their full strength. Noah agreed with the maid and suggested getting rid of him. Zoya looked at the boy in surprise, not understanding what he meant. The guy replied that he could arrange travel and accommodation for them. Zoya turned pale and said that it would cost a lot of money. Noah smiled and said that he would not cook everything from scratch. Zoya still looked at Noah in surprise, not believing her ears. The hero immediately began to act and called the servants to him. He asked to find out about the number of empty houses in the city and to buy them in different parts of the city. If that wasn't enough, they needed to build some sort of dormitory. As for food, depending on the number of people, it might be necessary to purchase supplies for the entire village. They would need to immediately inform their grain merchant friends. Noah, meanwhile, was also preparing to head to the capital. Zoya blushed with delight and said with shining eyes that the gentleman was amazing. After some time, Noah arrived on the streets of the city. It was quite noisy here from the large number of people. It seemed to the hero that there would be no problems with the grain supply during the selection, and that was already good. Perhaps there were even talented ones among them. On the way, the hero heard someone say his name. Noah looked up and noticed a luxurious carriage in which his brother was sitting. His brother was the 8th prince of the empire named Oscar Ararat. He was Noah's elder brother and also, according to the people, he was the best prince among the rest. Ararat smiled and asked the boy what he was doing in such a place. The hero replied that he was just walking around here and asked his brother a counter question. Oscar replied that he was going to go to Cobalt Street. He hoped that Noah would join him, and the guy did not refuse such an offer. While they were riding in the carriage, a conversation started between the brothers. Oscar heard that their father was constantly praising Noah. Besides, Oscar had not seen His Majesty so happy for many years. For Noah, this was something new. Their carriage with white horses stopped, and the brother said that from now on they would go on foot. This is the place where he willingly used his legs to hunt for treasures. The street they arrived at was full of luxurious shops. It was not as crowded as the capital, and the shops had many different interesting goods. Noah was surprised by this Cobalt Street. His older brother saw his sincere surprise and smiled. Cobaltova Street was a place where antique shops and stalls were concentrated. All the antiques of the empire were collected here. Finding a real treasure in this small town was considered a blessing for a nobleman. The hero had heard that everything here was very expensive, but Oscar didn't quite agree with that. He thought that 10,000 ren would be enough for a major deal. If you consider the average monthly income of an adult man in the city, it was 10 ren, and that was not a small sum. Looking at all the antique shops, Noah thought that there were real treasures here. He was amazed by the paintings that were sold there. Oscar noted that most of these paintings were fakes. Noah noticed an amazing antique box that also interested him. Noah was constantly looking around, looking for various interesting things in the shops. Together with his older brother, they noticed a luxurious samovar. They discussed it, and then moved on. It all became clear to Noah. The trend here was that there were more shops than stalls. He felt that there were many very good things here. Before he could think about it, his eyes fell on a very interesting little thing that he couldn't take his eyes off. Noah picked up a book with strange different patterns. The hero looked at it as if enchanted. Oscar noticed that Noah was acting strangely and asked what was wrong. The guy showed the book to the seller and asked how much it cost. The salesman handed the book to the boy and sold it for 3 ren. Noah walked forward, still staring at the book. Oscar looked questioningly at his brother. Oscar decided to ask his brother why he was looking at the book with such a scary face. Suddenly, Oscar's gaze seemed worried. He quickly approached Noah and asked to take a look at the book. Noah looked at his brother in surprise, not understanding his behavior. Suddenly, Oscar's eyes lit up with delight. He exclaimed that this was undoubtedly a real treasure. On the cover it was written that this was a magic book of the great magician Adria, and it was the original. The elder brother warned Noah that his care should not diminish and asked him to take care of it and look after it as he would his own hair. The hero also noticed something surprising. He looked at his skills window and saw something new there. After he picked up this book, his wind skill gained the ability of +F. This was definitely the reason. Noah couldn't say for sure whether it could be called a treasure. Oscar kept asking his brother, where was he looking for so long? Oscar looked up at the sky with a smile and told Noah that he had praised him just like their father had. Noah paid no attention to it. Now he was attracted by the strange glow of his blade. The boy frowned as he had a strange feeling. Oscar leaned over his brother, not understanding what he was talking about. Oscar was curious to know how Noah felt. In response, Noah silently grabbed the handle of his weapon. He took out his blade and resolutely pointed it at the book. Oscar was confused and did not understand what Noah wanted to do. The Leviathan blade told the hero to do it. The thing is that someone's soul was contained in this book. As soon as the boy touched the book with the tip of the sword, a small black hole appeared on the cover, from which a dark stream came out. This dark aura alerted Noah. The book itself opened the clasp and opened right in the middle. On these pages was a large seal with descriptions. The dark aura became more and more. A powerful stream of aura burst out from the book and soon became 10 times more powerful and larger. Oscar was scared, but the hero only watched the dark raging stream with cold blood. The black aura began to thicken until 2 glowing evil eyes looked out from it at the heroes. The black aura took the form of a dark man in a hood, and in his hands was a strange magical sharp staff. From the thick black aura, only 2 eyes were glowing. Noah noticed that his aura streams began to envelop the walls of nearby houses. Oscar refused to believe it, because it turned out to be a forbidden book that contained a man's soul. Oscar asked Noah to run away, as they had met the vengeful spirit of the great wind mage. But for some reason Noah stood still and did not take his eyes off the spirit. The next little story tells us about the maid's rest. This story happened even earlier, before the main events. Noah was about to go to his room. 2 maids bowed and wished Master Noah good night. After this, a woman came up to them and told Jessica and Lily that they had to take a bath. Soon, clouds of steam from the bathtub thickened in the high room and rose to the ceiling. As she undressed, Lily became curious about what kind of women she liked. A worried Jessica exclaimed that they weren't allowed to talk about such things. But Lily thought that everything would be fine if they just thought about it. Jessica reminded that the gentleman was only 6 years old, so he might like a childish type like Lily. Lily was embarrassed and puffed out her cheeks. She grabbed her towel and assumed that Jessica was referring to her small breasts. Jessica hadn't meant that at all. Lily apologized and quickly walked away. Suddenly the girl noticed Anna nearby, who was also taking a bath. The woman with luxurious, curvy forms knelt down and picked up a towel to wipe herself off. Lily ran up to Anna and grabbed her large treasure with both hands. Anna looked at Lily in confusion, trying to understand what she was doing. The girl weighed the 2 halves in her hands and said that Noah should have liked those who looked like his mother. Anna wanted to know what the girls were talking about. Lily looked at Jessica and said that her type was quite normal. Jessica suggested that he might have liked Zoe's type. Anna and Lily supported her idea. In the girl's opinion, she was graceful and pliable, stylish and outstanding, and this child's breasts would only get bigger with time. The girls thought about spreading the rumor. Lily ran to the entrance, thinking that Zoe had arrived. She thought it was a great time. But her way was blocked by a middle-aged woman who had also come to take a bath. It was unexpected for Lily to meet her here. The woman did not understand her surprise. The maid woman sternly asked the girls about their business here. The girls bowed and asked for forgiveness. The woman asked to introduce themselves normally, and then they would not have to ask her for forgiveness. Before leaving, Lily thought it was strange, because it should be Zoe's turn to take a bath. She didn't even notice that Zoe was hiding around the corner at that moment, and heard everything. Zoe, blushing, sat down on the floor and thought that she couldn't get there because of the raised obstacles. Covering her body with a towel, she slowly stood up. A smile appeared on her face, accompanied by a red blush. At that moment, she also thought about Mr. Noah's preferences. The frightened Oscar called out to Noah and asked him to run away quickly. It turned out that the book contained the vengeful spirit of the great wind mage. But Noah confidently looked straight into the face of the evil spirit and jumped towards him. The guy swung his sword in the air. His blade cut through the black body of the huge spirit, and its dark aura shone with dazzling sparks of light. Noah cut off the creature's head and the vengeful spirit soon began to dissolve. The hero raised the blade above his head. The tip of the sword flashed with light, and Noah pointed the sword towards the dissolving spirit. The flow of black aura and its absorption was so powerful that it could be seen even from the next street. In the end, the black aura dissipated into a bright ball of light. When it was all over, a small rain of clots of light and darkness fell on the ground. The soaking wet boy looked at his status and noticed that his wind magic had become equal to a simple F rank. After he defeated the enemy, his plus disappeared. Noah only now realized that his brother had shouted something and turned towards him. Oscar stared at his brother as if he were a ghost. Oscar didn't understand when his younger brother had become so strong and asked the boy a question. The man was worried about the damage to the city and looked around. Apparently, people got off with just a slight fright. The hero smiled and replied that the shot was fired upward. At that moment, he had a pretty good assessment of the situation, in Oscar's opinion. It was immediately obvious that he was their father's son, as well as his younger brother. At that moment, a man came up to them and asked for forgiveness. He thought it was a little impolite on his part. The man introduced himself as the owner of this store, and he saw what had just happened. He asked the guys to look at something else. Noah suggested that he had some treasure, and the man replied that he had something like that. Noah agreed and asked him to show them the way. The man led the brothers into a small, cozy room with a fireplace, where he sat them down at a table and stepped away for a moment. Oscar and Noah sat down and looked around. Noah smiled and said that this room was deliberately placed one step below the aristocrat's home. This room was a fine example of the best hospitality that commoners could continue. Oscar was impressed that Noah was already able to understand this. After a while, a man approached them from the next room. He was holding a small, patterned box in his hands. The man apologized for the late greeting. He introduced himself as Alan Barasli. He would like to greet His Imperial Highness the Prince, and would like to say that the feat of the 13th Prince was worthy of him. Alan admired His Highness's great strength. The hero saw nothing wrong with it, and admitted that he had brought it upon himself. He did it so that people would not worry about it. Alan thought it was rather modest. He was sure that the hero would be able to solve this mystery. With these words, he placed the box in front of Oscar and Noah. When the boys opened the box, they saw that there was a rather bulky ring inside. According to Alan, the legend was that the ring would reveal its true form when its true owner appeared. This story clearly intrigued Noah. Apparently, the Alan wanted the hero to try it. The man apologized and confirmed his guess. Noah agreed to try, but before that he asked the Alan a question. The thing is, this ring could be just junk. Alan thought about it, so he sold it, but it came back before he knew about it. Noah was surprised by his story. The man said that it was a very strange thing, so he was sure that there was something in it. Noah looked at this unusual ring again. His older brother smiled and suggested that Noah simply try it on. The hero took the ring and put it on his biggest finger. The ring shone with a bright light and performed a level limit check. It turned out to be a level 3 ES rarity. Noah looked at the ring in shock, not understanding where he heard that voice from. The voice said that its new owner had been confirmed and had reserved it. After that, some symbol similar to a magic bracelet formed around Noah's hand. Noah's body began to be covered with strange streams of a solid, sparkling substance. Oscar and Alan's mouths dropped open in surprise. They watched Noah's body with frozen faces. Noah felt a weight on himself, and then noticed that armor was starting to form on his shoulders and legs. Soon his transformation was complete, and the Noah ring completely clothed its owner in strong light armor. Oscar was speechless at first, shocked. His little brother had somehow developed white armor. The guy looked at his status with a smile and noticed that it hadn't changed at all. Noah told Alan that he would take the ring. The man was happy to give it to Noah. The boy said that his reward would be delivered later. Oscar asked Noah to stop and let him pay for the ring. The brother wanted to give a gift from himself and said that after the magic sword, he now also had armor. After all, Noah was different from them and was something else. The brothers got into the carriage and set off. According to the binding thoughts, the armor could be taken out and put away at will. If the armor itself was damaged and the ring was safe, it could be repaired later. Noah told Oscar that he would have to look into it. Oscar found all this surprising, because he had never heard of anything like it. The hero did not fully agree with him. He thought that Cobalt Street was just as interesting. When Noah got out of the carriage, he heard someone's quickly approaching footsteps behind him. A madman swung a knife at Noah's back and ordered him to die. Oscar was very scared for his brother and asked him to take care of himself. Noah didn't even turn to face his opponent. Before the man could stab him with a knife, a large shield appeared over Noah's head. The rest of the men helped and pinned the man down. They threw him to the ground, not understanding what he was doing and wanted to know the identity of the attacker. Noah looked at the man and said that he was a pretty stubborn guy. Meanwhile, Oscar didn't understand where his brother got his shield from. The hero showed the ring and said that he had linked it to the Leviathan. The Leviathan was like an automatic defense because it felt hostility towards its owner. Oscar was amazed that his little brother had automatic protection, but then a relieved smile appeared on his face. It seemed amazing to him that Noah had found a way to use it so quickly. The next day, the debt collector who attacked the hero should no longer be restored. The guy got out of his bed and the maids helped him get dressed. Noah decided to tell Alice about this to calm her down and went to the establishment where the girl was performing. When he entered the establishment, he met a girl singing on stage and happily decided to watch her. Noah noticed that this child was still growing, and he looked forward to it. A drunk man came up to the stage and told his sister that the song was good. He asked her to come up to him and pour him a drink. Alice was a little confused and asked for forgiveness. The man did not understand her and stepped on the stage. One of the tipsy men rebelled and said that he had laid eyes on the child first, so his drink would be first. The man at the stage did not understand where such a rule was written, but his rival simply ordered him to shut up. With his rude request, the man at the stage ordered the gorilla to come down to him. Alice silently watched the two visitors and did not understand what was happening. The men fell upon each other with their fists. The large visitor threatened to kill his rival, but the latter only added fuel to the fire and offered to try. Before they could hit each other, a Noah somehow appeared in their midst. Their fists crashed into the magical shields that protected the boy on both sides. The visitors clutched their hands in pain, not understanding what had just happened and cursing. Insults rained down on the guy who dared to interfere in their fight. Noah did not tolerate such boorish behavior and took out his sword. With a few movements in the air, he deftly cut all the clothes on the men's bodies and left them with nothing. The men rushed out of the establishment. Still cursing, they could not understand how they had managed to lose their clothes. The rest of the spectators immediately recognized the prince's man. They thought he had simply superb swordsmanship. As expected of a prince, his swordsmanship was also top-notch. The people laughed and shouted that these guys were unlucky. They exclaimed to him that it was amazing. The hero approached the young singer to make sure she was okay. Alice thanked him for his help and replied that everything was fine. Suddenly, a dark-haired man ran up to the prince and said that he was sorry for that. Apparently, it was the owner of the establishment. Noah looked at the man reproachfully and asked him not to allow such customers to come here from now on. The owner felt awkward. He lowered his pale face and did not know how to answer the guy. He awkwardly replied that it was precisely these customers who supported their store. This store was a business for them. In that case, Noah agreed and said that he would buy the entire store. For a while, the owner of the establishment tried to understand once again what he had just been told. His surprised gaze did not leave the guy. Noah handed him a whole bag of coins, which contained a whole 1,000 ren. He wanted to buy the whole store, so this should not happen again. The man was delighted and thanked him for the money. Alice thanked His Highness for his help and asked how she could repay her debt. The hero suggested that she just keep performing. All he was looking for in her was singing, and all she had to do was sing. The hero hoped that His Majesty would be able to hear her, and until then, she could get better. Alice was glad to hear this and agreed with the prince. In that case, Alice offered His Highness to listen to her one more song. Noah smiled and offered her to sing. The girl took a deep breath before beginning. When she made her first sounds, it was as if a bright cosmic light had pierced me. His face was deeply impressed. The rest of the spectators were also fascinated. They noticed that this was unusual singing. The amazed hero turned first to the people, and then back to Alice. It seemed to him that in one instant she became better. The guy was just as delighted as their audience. The enthusiastic spectators applauded and raised their hands up, supporting Alice. The man who entered the establishment assumed that it was also the power of His Highness. The hero heard a familiar voice and looked around. Byron stood in front of him. Byron smiled and said that now this child can answer to His Highness. Noah looked at the singing Alice with a smile and said that there is something in it. Together with Byron, Noah left the establishment. On the way, he asked the man what he was doing. Byron said he was just passing by and saw His Highness, but the hero knew it was a lie. Byron was surprised that Noah realized it so quickly. Noah replied that merchants could not waste time, especially if he was a successful merchant. As expected from Noah, he understood everything. In fact, Byron wanted to ask His Highness about many things. He said that this year it was time to hire new servants for the Imperial Palace. Once a year, the Imperial Palace would receive a large number of maids. This was a nominal set of servants. If anyone caught the eye of His Majesty, they would be ordered to stay overnight, and this was a great chance to become a concubine, and so on. Noah looked askance at Byron and asked what had happened. Byron hesitantly asked him to explain the selection trend. As far as the hero understood, Byron wanted to send the woman to the Imperial Palace. Byron nodded his head affirmatively. Government and business were inseparable. If his man was in the palace, he could get information as quickly as possible. And if he became a famous person, it would be a great advantage for business. Byron promised that he would not ask for it for free and warned that he had already sent his feelings to the mansion. Noah smiled and suggested not to pay him in advance. First, he had to achieve everything. The hero said that if he liked this girl, he would make her his servant. Byron thanked His Highness and promised to choose a girl he would definitely like. But Noah spoke seriously and warned that he should like this girl. Byron said it was like a worker evolving in an instant. Noah smiled and confirmed his words. In the real game there was only one try, but Noah promised to give him as many as he wanted. Byron bowed and thanked His Highness for his generosity. Noah assumed that he still had questions. Byron admitted that the hero could understand that. Byron dropped to one knee and bowed. If possible, he would like to use His Highness's coat of arms on his sign. This meant that Byron would be under his protection. The hero replied that it was quite good and warned that he would not tolerate betrayal. Byron was happy to hear this and thanked Noah. At this moment, when the hero revealed his status, he noticed that another plus had been added to his intellect and spirit. Even though they were now on a nearly completely filled street, if they increased the number of subordinates as is, then Noah would become stronger and stronger. Suddenly the hero was surprised that his water skill began to disappear. He did not understand what was happening and what it was connected with. Plus meant an amendment for subordinates. The status was given to him when the lands of Almeria were given to him for subordination. In other words, there was an incident in Almeria. It is an incident that seems to have happened because of his subordinate. The maids were happy to greet Noah, but Noah ignored it and asked to prepare a carriage for him to meet His Majesty. The girls understood everything and hurried to carry out the order. Noah was only interested in what happened in Almeria. After some time, the hero told His Majesty about the incident in Almeria. The king was curious how the hero could understand this. Noah was alarmed by his question. He assumed that the king already knew about it, but this was not so. The king said that he was simply looking at the signs. If so, then Noah thought something had definitely happened. While they were talking, his servant came up to His Majesty and whispered something in his ear. The king understood everything and told Noah that it was amazing. His Majesty said that there was a rebellion in Almeria. Noah thought that this incident was a rebellion. The king wanted to know his opinion and asked how big Noah thought the rebellion was. One letter S from the hero's status has disappeared, as well as his plus. The status was increased when he became the ruler of the lands of Almeria, but now it has decreased. At this point, the hero believed that the scale was small. The king exclaimed that this was the correct answer. According to the report, there are currently about 5,000 people. Noah gave him the right answer. As Noah could see, it was a small scale, and it was his land. The king asked if he was really ready to solve this problem on his own. Noah thought for a while. Unfortunately, the hero thought that this would be impossible. The king expected something different, and was surprised by such an answer. Noah was still young and didn't even know the battlefield. He didn't know if the soldiers would listen to him, and he thought it would be a good idea to send one of the other brothers. For the king, this was a very unexpected answer. After an objective judgment, it was difficult to refuse. He agreed and said that he would choose someone else besides him, and asked who, in Noah's opinion, could be sent there. The boy thought that Brother Henry would be the best option. Judging by the scale, he thought they should go on the offensive. There was no need for cunning plans here, and Brother Henry was the most cautious of the princes, and he would be the best for this. The king smiled and agreed with such a wonderful choice. He suggested doing as Noah said. Soon after some time, the carriage with Brother Henry and Noah set off on their journey. The fourth prince named Henry asked his younger brother if he really wanted to give him such a good opportunity. Their empire was a country of warriors, and if he achieved military success in the future, it would help him. Besides, Noah had his magic sword. Noah was sure that it was impossible to lead soldiers without knowledge. He certainly would not die, but there was a chance that the soldiers could die in vain. His brother Henry was amazed that the boy had already thought about so much. Henry said that in that case he would deal with the enemy's cavalry and clear their land. Apparently, their enemy had a lot of cavalry. Suddenly the guy's blade began to shine with a bright light. The hero almost jumped out of the moving carriage and ordered it to stop. The footman was seriously frightened and jerked the reins towards himself. The fourth prince was also frightened and asked Noah what was the matter. His Leviathan sword suddenly reacted, in other words, someone was aiming at him. He couldn't involve his brother in this, so he had to solve this problem. With that, the boy jumped out of the moving carriage. The hero noticed that a magical sparkling seal with pentagrams had appeared not far from him. The light grew stronger and soon powerful thunderstorm flashes began to sparkle from the seal. The flashes of light and thunder turned into a bright net and hung over the hero. Henry was worried about his brother and called out to Noah. Noah's multiple shields protected him from the attacks, but it did nothing against the web itself. The web grabbed the target and dragged him away in an unknown direction. Noah's shields grew stronger until they tore through the magic grid. The boy immediately thought that it was an attack from the rebels. Even if he was 6 years old, as long as he was a lord, he would always be the target of certain people. As if out of nowhere, armed men in black cloaks appeared. As soon as they surrounded the young lord, one of them suggested that the others do the same. With his order, the rest of the men also rushed at the guy with swords. The hero swung his blade and struck the first attacker from the air. It took him a few swings of his sword to stop and knock each man aside. The wounded opponent said that it was impossible. He couldn't believe that such a child could be so strong. Henry was shocked when, right before his eyes, the man spat out clots of blood and fell to the ground. The entire group around Noah also fell to the ground and were defeated. Henry got out of the carriage and said that it was just amazing. In just a few days, Noah had become even stronger. He was curious about Noah's shields, which he had not seen before. The hero replied that it was a magical item he found on Cobalt Street. The ring was compatible with the Leviathan, so he used them in combination. Henry laughed and said that was a more surprising answer than he expected. He kicked one of the victims and said that Noah had apparently killed them, and he wanted to hear the main thing. Henry was shocked when his younger brother said that he had not killed any of them. Henry was convinced that this was indeed true. After the blow, they fainted from the intention of the Leviathan, because such a person can commit suicide. Henry laughed loudly and said that it was just great. He asked to leave them to him, and he would make sure that they started talking. Upon arrival, the boy met the merchant Byron. Byron approached His Highness and asked about his wishes. Taking a hot cup of tea, The hero admitted that he had some kind of assignment for him, or rather a request. He specified that the merchant conducted his business near Almeria, and Byron confirmed this. Noah asked to buy horse feed immediately. 10,000 ren were available for this. Byron didn't understand why the guy wanted to do this. The hero replied that if there was a leak, they could have problems, and there was a rebellion in Almeria. Judging by Byron's surprised face, he didn't know about it. The boy thought the rebels were good on horseback and that cavalry was waiting for them. Byron mentioned Mr. Calhoun when he heard about the cavalry. In order to neutralize their cavalry detachment, the hero wanted to reduce their food supply. Byron agreed and suggested that they should also buy up all the human food. The merchant asked to leave everything to him, but the hero replied that this did not need to be done. Byron did not understand why Noah refused. Noah replied that they needed to buy feed for the horses from outside, because there was a limit to robbing the locals. The merchant realized that he could loot the soldiers' rations, but horse feed was a completely different matter. Noah smiled and confirmed his guess. This is exactly what Byron expected from Noah. He bowed and said that he would immediately begin to fulfill his request and headed for the exit. The hero thought that this should make his brother's battle a little easier. After some time, the boy arrived back to the king, who was feeding white doves in his courtyard. The king reported to Noah that one of the rebels had spoken. They wanted to catch him and then use him for their own purposes. Noah thought that it might all be a lie. The king smiled and said that Noah was smart enough. His Majesty asked him not to worry, because there was a way to find out if he was telling the truth. They had the so-called snake path. The hero knew nothing about torture, so he would accept it as it was. The king praised Noah and said that if he were caught, the empire would have to make a difficult choice. Noah bowed to the king and thanked him for these words. The king also liked his idea to pay attention to the food. Noah thought it was happening again now. It seemed like it had happened just recently. The king said that anyone could make a siege, but to take into account the territories and make a siege only on horses, and on one's own territory, was quite tricky. The king walked up to Noah and put his hand on the boy's shoulder. For him, this idea and the ability to act, it was not something that could be done easily. Noah was touched by the king's wonderful words and thanked him for his praise. His eyes sparkled with happiness. The king intended to give him a reward, but he thought that money would be too vulgar. In this case, the king knew what to do and called to him a servant named Cruz. He allowed the servant to attach one sword to Noah's coat of arms and issue a proclamation. Noah looked up at the king in shock. The empire was a warrior nation, so adding a sword to the coat of arms without the emperor's permission was impossible. If he used it without permission, he would be accused of blasphemy and, worse, the death penalty. In other words, it was the highest honor. The king smiled sincerely at Noah. The boy's eyes sparkled with happiness. He thanked the king from the bottom of his heart for such a gift. The king asked Noah how he would choose his knight. The boy replied that he had one plan. The king became interested in what his plan looked like. The hero asked for permission to show it in this place, and the king did not mind. The boy sat down at a small round table and took a cup of tea. 4 servants gathered around him, holding buckets in their hands. As soon as the king sat down on the throne nearby, Noah said that they could begin. At the order of the servants, they poured buckets of water on Noah. The king stared at the hero, fascinated. His ring began to shine with a bright light. From the side from which the water flowed, a shield formed and protected Noah from danger. The next servant also poured water on the guy, but the stream of water broke against another shield that formed on the other side. At this time, Noah allowed himself to drink tea in peace. The king's face was frozen in shock. Noah took a sip and looked at his majesty with a smile. In the end, not a single servant with a full bucket of water reached his goal. Everything around the guy was flooded with water, but his territory with the table was untouched. The king grinned. The boy said he would do nothing, and the man would attack him at the election. He wanted to see how far they could go, and then he would make a decision. That was exactly what the king expected of Noah. He said they would move the selection to a place where Noah could more easily endure the long process. But the king still believed that there was danger in this. He assumed that there might be a strong man who could break through his defense. But Noah was confident in his decision and said that he was ready for it. The king grinned and said that these were good words. He was proud of his son, the prince of the empire, Noah. When the hero returned to the mansion, He was greeted by a maid who warned him that Byron was waiting for him in the living room. In the middle of the painted walls of the room, Byron greeted the hero and knelt before him. Noah thought he was early. The man replied that the amount of processed food was limited and it would not be difficult to buy them. Besides, he knew their location. At that moment, the maid came in and asked the master for forgiveness. Noah turned to her and allowed her to enter. The girl asked for forgiveness again and exclaimed that there was a wounded man at the main gate. This man came to them from Almeria with an urgent report. As soon as he heard this, Noah immediately ran out of the room. When Byron and Noah came out to the gate, they saw a seriously wounded knight there. The captain of the detachment exclaimed that it was the first time he had met them. He introduced himself as the captain of a detachment of 10 men in the province of Adora in Almeria. The knight bowed before Noah and reported that there had been an uprising in Almeria. His superiors had started a rebellion. This was the most urgent report, but His Highness already knew this information. Byron felt sorry for this man, because it would not give His Highness anything. Noah replied that he understood everything and ordered that the man be cured. The maid hurried to help them. The hero also asked to be given 1,000 ren as a reward. Byron did not understand this at all and asked His Highness what he meant. Noah stepped aside and left the wounded knight with the maids. Byron believed that the information he brought was of no use to His Highness, so it was a very great reward for him. It certainly was. But Noah reminded him that the captain had come to tell him this without regard for danger, and he had to respond to his loyalty. The merchant was simply going to say that it was a lot of money. But looking at this wounded captain, the guy could confidently say that it was worth it. Later, one of the maids knocked on the master's office. With his permission, she opened the doors of the room. At that moment, he was reading a book at his desk. He noticed Zoe and asked what happened to her. Zoe was so alarmed by something that her face was dark blue. With terrible, frightened eyes, the girl fell to her knees. The hero approached the pale girl and asked what was the matter. In response, she silently took out a small bag with trembling hands and handed it to him. The guy opened the bag and saw ordinary money inside. There were about 500 ren. Shocked, Zoya said that a stranger had given her the money. With trembling hands, she took out another small bag and said that if she gave this to the master, it would be her reward. This stranger said it was a sleeping pill. He wanted Zoe to mix it with his drink, or something to make him pass out. Zoya was sure that it was so. Most likely they were rebels, which meant that they were very interested in it. The hero understood everything, but he didn't understand why she brought it to him. Zoya exclaimed that she couldn't betray her master, because he even helped her with the village. Tears came into her eyes. She cried out that if she did not do this, this stranger would kill her. She was forced to take it, but she could not betray her master. The hero understood everything and went to his table. There he wrote a note and gave the piece of paper to Zoya. Zoya didn't understand what it was, and the guy replied that it was her reward. These strangers tried to buy her betrayal for 500 ren. She did not betray him, so he added another 0 to the sum. The girl looked at the coupon in tears. Realizing these huge numbers, she exclaimed that she could not take them. But Noah smiled at her and asked her to take them. Zoya thanked the gentleman several times. She could not find words to accurately describe his best features. The hero sat down on the chair and admitted that it would be nice if she did something else for him. Wiping away her tears, the girl screamed that she would do it and asked to order her anything. The guy handed her a small bag of sleeping pills. The hero said he was going to take it. Once he fainted, Zoya would have to hand it over to them. Zoe couldn't believe her ears. Noah said that she would then have to run away and hide immediately, because they would definitely try to shut her mouth. Zoya looked at the gentleman in confusion, not understanding what he had in mind. Soon a bright crescent moon and sparkling stars appeared in the night sky. It was on this night that Noah woke up. He smelled hay and opened his eyes abruptly. His hands were tied with a tight rope. His legs were also tied and a rough burlap cloth was thrown over his body. A man's voice was heard from outside, saying that it was troublesome. He thought he could use that dagger. His partner exclaimed that it was only for emergencies. Hearing the men's voices, the hero thought that they were not supposed to hear him. Naturally, his limbs were tied. The hero shook his head, causing a small dark stone to fall out of his ear. His weapon had been taken, so it was a good idea to hide it in his ear. Noah noticed that his ring was still on his finger. By activating the ring, he was able to draw his Leviathan blade and channeled the ring's power into the ropes. The sharp streams of the ring easily cut through the ropes in an instant. The guy was in no hurry to take the sword, but only looked at his hands. At first Noah thought he was in a building, but it was just a carriage. He touched his sword to Leviathan and asked to show him his memory. Images appeared before him, and the hero saw himself from the outside. He fell asleep in his office, after which several people in black cloaks ran to him. They were in a great hurry while they tied the guy's legs. It was a fair distance to Almeria, so they were going to tie him up tighter. They were in such a hurry that they even decided to let the maid go. Zoya hurried to run away at Noah's request. The people carried out the sleeping Noah and placed him in a cart. After that, they immediately set off. The hero realized that this was the whole story. He smiled and thought that this was great, because now he understood the whole situation. Noah took the sword and stood up. Directly in front of him sat a group of people in black cloaks, who had made camp by a fire. The men did not understand what was going on and asked who he was. One of the kidnappers suggested that someone had tied the rope poorly. Noah jumped deftly from the cart to the ground. All the people's attention was riveted on him. The boy prepared his sword. Seeing his blade, one of the men asked where he had managed to hide it. Before he could ask this question, the guy approached him with lightning speed and dealt a crushing blow. The guy was showered with insults, after which all the people pounced on him. But no one could even touch Noah. Noah inflicted serious wounds on his opponents with just one swing. Within minutes, their fight was over. The group of people fell to the ground, unable to even resist his attacks. The hero looked at the wounded people and said that it was a waste of time. Most likely, these people were part of the rebels from Almeria. The previous kidnapping attempt failed, so they decided to bribe his servants. Just at that moment, Noah noticed a group of soldiers with torches on the hill. Among these soldiers was a worried Zoya. The hero was surprised to see a crowd of them here. Zoya explained that she was very worried about the gentleman, so she asked the soldiers to help her. She was shocked that Noah was able to take on a group of attackers on his own, and exclaimed that it was amazing. The hero looked at the soldiers and asked who their captain was. The captain was glad to meet the 13th prince. Having said this, he bowed to his highness. Noah trusted the soldiers to carry these attackers. He said that these people attacked him a few days ago, and if they could find something in common, that would be good. The squad captain understood everything. He approached one of the attackers and examined him. Something strange fell out of the man's pocket. Noah immediately noticed the enemy's strange blade that fell to the ground and became wary. Before the soldier could raise the blade, Noah ordered the captain not to touch it. Everyone froze in place, and the hero came closer to examine him more closely. His eyes reflected fear. The boy thought that it was the same dagger that the man had spoken about. She had a huge killing intent, and through the Leviathan, the hero could feel the power of the curse. It was the magic of cursing with human thoughts. Noah already guessed what all this meant. Looking at his frightened, pale face, Zoe became scared. The hero asked his Leviathan sword if it could do it, and with that question he raised the blade over the dark energy of the dagger. The guy asked to do it. Everyone silently watched Noah and did not understand what he was going to do. After Noah's request, his blade began to shine with a bright light. The blade of the Leviathan launched a dagger, sparkling with a bright light high into the sky. Zoya looked at Noah in shock, as if waiting for an explanation from him. The bright light of the dagger rose so high that it flew out of the atmosphere and into space. The next sunny morning came. Noah came to the beautiful royal flower garden, where he met the king. The king was glad that the hero came to him and greeted his son with a smile. He sincerely placed his hands on the boy's shoulders and praised him for his excellent work. Noah smiled and admitted that he was glad that his plan had worked. The king replied that Baker was the leader of the rebels. Last night this column of water that came out of nowhere pierced his head between his eyebrows. Noah was glad that the Leviathan's super long-range attack was successful. That dagger was aimed with malice at someone with equally strong malice. The rebels of Almeria, having lost their leader in the blink of an eye, were suppressed by Brother Henry. According to the report, most of the rebels were captured. The man with the report wanted to get His Majesty's consent. The king thought for a moment, and looked around at everyone in his hall. Everyone was silently waiting for his decision. The king ordered the horses to be prepared, because they had to cleanse the entire clan. Those present were surprised by this decision, but one of them thought it was right. All the people agreed and exclaimed that the king had made the right decision. The king asked Noah to wait and take them. The hero regretted it, but he was forced to refuse. The king did not understand why Noah had decided not to take these people. Everyone present was confused. Their faces turned pale from this misunderstanding. The king wanted to know what Noah meant. Everyone looked at the prince with frozen, shocked faces. The hero said that punishment should only be for compliance with the law. According to the laws of the empire, the organizer of the uprising was sentenced to death. The third level and conspirators were hanged until a higher level was assigned. The rest, depending on the degree of involvement. If the emperor took the initiative to break the law, it would cause concern among the people. Therefore, Noah asked to reconsider the king's decision. Everyone looked at the boy with concern and waited for the king's answer. The king grinned and admitted that Noah was right. Smiles of hope appeared on the pale faces behind the stands. The king praised Noah for pointing out his mistake. But a light punishment would not satisfy him. The punishment had to be the heaviest within the law and not subject to revision. The king hoped that Noah had no more problems. As expected of the 13th prince, he spoke his mind. People were amazed at the way he delivered his words. This was a talent that was bestowed upon them by the heavens. A certain man exclaimed that Noah was a genius. The king was pleased to hear these words. Everyone thought Noah was amazing and his faith was strong. The king agreed with a smile that he had not made a mistake today and had not left a bad mark in history thanks to Noah. For this he should give him some kind of reward. The king clapped his hands and offered the surprised boy to grant him a title. His son could only protest against his decisions, but this is what makes his independent qualities clear. The whole world had to know about his wisdom. The king rose from his throne and approached the hero. He awarded him the title of wise man. The people were infinitely happy to hear the king's words. Everyone began to rejoice and greet Prince Noah. At that moment, the guy noticed that a new title of wise prince had appeared in his status. Noah was happy and thanked the king for his new title. The king apparently regretted that Noah had not been born a little earlier. Noah was so surprised to hear this that he raised his wide eyes to the king. No one else could understand what the king was talking about. Several weeks had passed since then. The hero was on the horse street, calmly drinking hot tea, while the sounds of battle were heard not far from him. At this very moment of his rest, one of the muscular men tried with all his might to break through the prince's defense, but he could not break through Noah's round shield. The long-awaited nightly selection has arrived, and many people came to watch it. The man swung his sword again and hit Noah's shield with all his might, but there was not a scratch left on it. People were surprised that no matter how he attacked the prince, everything was unsuccessful. Despite all his shouts and techniques, it all turned out to be useless. The judge asked the next contender to come forward. The disappointed warrior could only leave the field. The next mage tried to reach Noah with a strong stream of fire. All the people were shocked by its huge flame. But Noah didn't pay any attention to its power, and continued to drink his tea as if nothing had happened, while the fire incinerated everything in the area. No one could believe their eyes, because Noah was resisting such a strong attack. For many of the challengers, it was too much. Next in line was the girl knight. She held a large, shining sword in her hands and prepared to attack. Noah looked at her with a rather indifferent look, despite the fact that she had quite a round and curvy figure. Upon impact, the tip of the sword was able to leave a chip on Noah's magical shield. It seemed quite astonishing to everyone. Even Noah's eyes widened in shock when he noticed something was wrong. But the girl was not going to give up and used all her strength to strike. Noah didn't even expect his shield to shatter into pieces. He didn't even have time to come to his senses before the challenger's sword pierced his shoulder and injured the guy. Noah looked at his wounded hand, from where blood gushed. The girl was so frightened by the consequences of the blow that she froze for a while. The challenger realized what she had done and dropped her weapon in panic. The guards did not understand what she was doing and were about to tie the girl up right there. Noah silently rose to his feet. He approached the girl, who had already been forced to her knees, and said that she had passed the test. The girl could not believe her ears. Noah ordered to let her go. The guards did not want to do this, because this man had harmed His Highness. Noah ordered the guards to let her go again. When the girl was released, she didn't even know how to justify her actions to the prince. Noah hadn't said what the passing grade would be before. No matter what she did, he thought that was the passing grade. The people watching the competition were shocked that the condition for passing was to wound the prince. The one who pierced the prince's shoulder was a man of great potential. After the competition, Noah went to the king's room, where they helped him treat and bandage his wound. The girl challenger followed him. While the servants were busy treating the wound, Noah asked the girl to introduce herself. The girl still couldn't come to her senses, so she apologized. She knelt down in front of the prince and bowed. The applicant introduced herself as Charlie Grands. The hero noticed that her armor was not bad and wanted to know who made it. The girl replied that this armor was passed down from generation to generation. She wanted to talk about the fact that she had harmed His Highness, but Noah only smiled. The guy said that it was not her fault, because it was he who told her to do it. The girl was still worried about this incident. Noah replied that if he wanted to prevent it, he would have done so. Everything that happened was pure chance. It was necessary to find a person with sufficient attack power, as well as someone who was ready to pierce even the prince on command. Charlie was shocked that Noah didn't even consider his own danger. The girl bowed again and introduced herself by her name. Charlie swore eternal loyalty to His Imperial Highness. Noah was glad to hear this and looked at his status. If you think about it, he got the most boosts to his abilities from Charlie than from anyone else. The Imperial Majesty's physician, Tuta Croy, also had something to say. Croy told the boy that, fortunately, his bones were not affected, only his muscles, so the wound only needed to be stitched up. Noah understood everything and asked to finish it all. The doctor took a needle and thread. Charlie was seriously shocked by something. The hero noticed this and asked Charlie what was wrong with her. Charlie was impressed that cuts could be healed this way, and there was no doctor in her village. Noah was shocked to hear this and asked about the sick and wounded. Charlie said they asked Mrs. Ababu to pray when they were sick. The doctor sympathetically said that this was common practice in poor villages. The hero asked Tuta how one could become a doctor. The man replied that one could become a student of an already practicing doctor. Noah came up with something and approached Charlie. He said that they needed a child from her village. She would have to bring a child who would try his best. Charlie was surprised by this request, but did not understand why it was necessary. Noah asked Tuta if he could take some students with him. The doctor, of course, was not against taking students. Charlie still did not understand why His Highness needed to do this. Noah got up from his chair when his wound was bandaged. Noah said he would pay for tuition and living expenses, so she should just bring someone who had a strong desire to become a doctor. Charlie was shocked to hear this news. She knew that then everyone in the village would be healthy. Tears quickly filled the girl's eyes. She bowed low to His Highness and thanked him for his help. Several days have passed since then. Noah, accompanied by Charlie, came to the very street where the guy bought the book and the ring. Charlie had never been here before, so she was interested in looking around. They entered the room of the same merchant from whom the boy had purchased the ring. The merchant assumed that Noah was looking for a gift for His Highness the fourth prince. This was true, since the fourth prince had suppressed the rebellion in Noah's stead. The man replied that he had just recently acquired a couple of new things. He clapped his hands for his subordinates to take out the things. Several men and a woman brought out antiques in the form of paintings and boxes. Also among these amazing things was an equally amazing thing, a glass statue of a girl in a dress. The hero wondered what it was. They must have used glass instead of crystal. The merchant was surprised that the boy saw it at first sight. The hero did not know that it was possible to make such a statue of a goddess out of glass. The man answered that it was left by the famous Lindsay. Lindsay was the only one who could make statues out of glass, and now it was a lost skill. There were only 2 glass statues of goddesses in the whole world. The hero understood everything and said that he would buy it. The merchant was pleased with this and said that its price would be 10,000 ren. Noah gave him a whole bag of coins and said there were more. It was his reward for helping him choose a gift for his brother. The merchant thanked the boy from the bottom of his heart for his generosity. Just at that moment, Noah's older brother came to them. He didn't even know that the younger prince would be here. The heroes didn't expect to meet Oscar here. The elder brother immediately noticed the statue of the goddess Lindsay and asked if it was real. The merchant confirmed it, and said that he would not offer a fake to His Highness. Oscar felt sorry that there were two of them in this world. Noah was surprised that his brother apparently knew where the second one was and asked him a question. But how did it turn out that the second statue was with Oscar? The value of a treasure increases with its rarity, and if there were two of them instead of one, then the value was completely different. Then the hero, without thinking, took the large statue in his hands and lifted it up. The merchant and Charlie did not understand what Noah was going to do with this statue. The guy threw the statue on the floor, and it shattered into pieces. Charlie and the merchant could not believe their eyes. The merchant called out to His Highness, but Noah smiled and asked him not to worry. He asked him to just keep all the money he had received earlier. Noah also wanted to give the merchant his salary. The second statue of the goddess had just come out, but it was already broken, so the hero wanted them to spread rumors throughout Cobalt Street. Charlie and the merchant were still in shock. A smile appeared on his older brother's face. Oscar said that his statue would definitely go up in value, and that was just amazing. If the treasure is found, it will be good, but not for its creators. And if this treasure is only with Oscar's brother, then its value will increase. Oscar scratched his head and admitted that he wasn't that smart when he was younger, but he only achieved that after he became an adult. Leaving the establishment, Oscar promised to thank Noah later. When he left, the hero offered the merchant to choose a gift for Henry. The merchant replied that they had many other interesting things. After some time, Noah, accompanied by Charlie, came out onto Cobalt Street. Charlie said that this goddess was a treasure and did not understand why the hero did this. Noah said that after all it was just a thing, and real treasure is not like that. Charlie was shocked by this answer. Noah looked at his statistics window again. The hero believed that the real treasure was people, and nothing else. He meant people like Charlie. Charlie was shocked to hear such words addressed to her. In Noah's opinion, only people were treasure. Charlie was so impressed by his words that she again promised His Highness to follow him for the rest of her life. Noah agreed with her, and the girl happily followed Noah further. The boy dreamed of becoming an adult, and then entering the lands as a lord. By then he should have collected his treasures. One clear sunny morning, the maid bowed and wished the prince good morning. Two maids stood together and guarded the door of the room, which soon opened. Behind her was Noah Ararat, a wise prince who was already 12 years old. While the hero was sitting at a long dining table with several candles on it, he noticed one of the maids. The maid kept her eyes on the view outside the window. A queue of many people could be seen in the royal courtyard at the back. Noah assumed the girl was bothered by the line and asked her name. Zoe replied that it was Gigi. Gigi said there was a line of presents for His Highness' birthday. Even after 3 days, the line was still there. Zoya said last year the line lasted a whole week. Gigi was delighted when she heard this. Zoe reminded the maid that they had to work, and the girl came to her senses. Later the hero proceeded to the Ministry of Military Affairs. There he met a man who conveyed a request from the Minister of War Henry. Henry asked to come as soon as Noah arrived at the ministry. His brother Henry headed the Ministry of War after the incident in Almeria. Noah, in turn, was appointed by His Majesty because of his ability to fully control the magical sword Leviathan. The hero had to talk to this Minister of Military Affairs. Noah reached the Minister of War's room and knocked on the door. He announced that Noah was coming to see them and was allowed to enter. His brother Henry was sitting in the room. Next to him stood a man in armor, who wished His Highness the wise prince good morning and bowed. The hero knew this man. The man's name was Rice Keiki. Keiki was his brother's direct subordinate, who was chosen by the knight's selection. He was good at leading the army, and he was also very courageous. Now he commanded the second regular army of the empire. Henry also wanted to hear Noah's opinion. His Majesty's orders were that Rice would lead the second army and crush the barbarians on the southern border. The barbarians in the south would take advantage of them if they showed them a nice face. A second army had to be sent to show the difference in strength. Noah understood his brother Henry very well. Noah looked at Henry's assistant and asked him to tell him just one thing. He caught the man off guard by asking what the actual size of the second army was. Henry didn't understand what Noah meant by actual size. Henry immediately suspected Rice and asked the man what he was hiding from him. Rice realized that he had been exposed and fell to the ground to bow low. Henry looked quite frightening in this situation. Noah asked his brother to wait, because it didn't matter much. The regular army is financed from the treasury budget depending on the number of servicemen. Therefore, they often register various people who were not soldiers, as well as traders and collaborators from nearby villages, which is why they often pocket the budget allocated for them. Henry couldn't believe they could actually do that and was furious. Rice was ready to sink into the ground and exclaimed that he was very sorry. Henry was barely able to restrain himself from harming the rice. Noah asked his brother to wait a little, and Risa not to be afraid. Increasing the numbers was within the general's authority, so he did not blame him for it. Noah assured the men that everything was fine, as the nominal figures would be a deterrent. Henry understood. Sometimes it was better to say it was a big army of 100,000. That's what Noah wanted to tell his brother. Henry finally agreed with his younger brother. Noah said that this time it was different. His Majesty's order was an overwhelming victory, so he asked how many real soldiers there were. The worried Rice replied that they had about 2,000 people. The hero asked to make sure before sending that he had joined the number of real soldiers. Rice understood everything and promised to do it immediately. Noah asked his brother to lend him some paper and a pen. The hero wrote something on a piece of paper, then showed it to Rice. At first glance, Rice didn't understand anything. The hero asked to take this to the Ministry of Finance. This is for further various expenses for 2,000 people. Noah was going to give the Rice these expenses. Rice didn't know what to tell him, but Noah asked him to just take it. The hero was going to do this in exchange for their victory. Rice understood everything and bowed low once more. Agreeing with Noah, he hurried to the exit. His older brother Henry noticed that Noah had used the whip and candy correctly. Soon 2 carriages with white horses set off on their journey. Henry was in one carriage, and Noah was in the other. Henry remembered that his brother had not yet experienced a real battle. Noah completely agreed with him. Along the way, the hero once again noticed his status. Even when he was 12 years old, his level was still first. Most likely, this was due to the rules of the Imperial family. Imperial children often died as infants. At first glance, it is believed that they often died from smallpox and other plague diseases. Princes were taken from their mothers immediately after birth and raised by nannies and other servants, so they did not receive their mother's milk and had a low immunity. Some servants said that it was poisoning due to the struggle for power. In any case, it is known that many children of the imperial family died prematurely, and in order to ensure an heir, princes were not allowed to go into battle without a direct order from the emperor. Henry said that Noah was already 12 years old, so he thought that he should experience real war before he became lord of the lands. If His Majesty allowed it, Noah was ready as always. Since he had his own magic sword, Henry thought it shouldn't be too difficult for him. Noah asked when his brother had his first battle. Henry remembered that day with a smile. But before he could finish speaking, their carriages stopped abruptly. Henry didn't understand why their carriage had stopped so suddenly. There was a child standing in front of them, asking for help. In a torn burlap cloth, the child fell to his feet and bowed his head right on the road in front of the carriages. Noah immediately noticed his appearance. The child was a little girl. She raised her head to the carriages with a drop of hope. There were children nearby who were just like her and rushed to her rescue. Several men came out from around the corner after the children, displeased that she had caused them trouble. The hero immediately disliked their faces. One of the men grabbed the child by the hair and ordered her to come to them. The second man grabbed the second girl, but she fought him off with all her might. It was obvious that the passers-by felt sorry for them, but they could do nothing about it. The only one who ordered them to stop was Noah, who got out of his carriage. The angry men didn't know who the guy was and rudely ordered him to get out of there. Noah said something about registration, but the men didn't understand what he meant. The hero demanded from the men their registration, certificate, and the name of their store. The men didn't like that some guy was asking them about something like that. Noah replied that trading without registration was a criminal offense under the laws of the empire. One of the men pulled out his knife, and the other attacked Noah with his fists. With the help of his magic bracelet, Noah immediately summoned his sword and launched a frontal attack. The guy stabbed a large, muscular man in the right shoulder and cut the stomach of the second. The third man, who was standing behind them, was wounded in the left arm and screamed in pain. Henry smiled and praised his brother for a job well done. 2 of the men fell to the ground bleeding, while the third was still able to kneel. The locals were amazed and exclaimed that it was amazing. They did not understand where this boy had learned it, because it looked so much like a masterpiece. The children were as amazed as the locals. They stared at Noah with their mouths open, fascinated. Noah wanted to make sure that the girl was okay and asked her a question. The girl cried with happiness and exclaimed that everything was okay. Noah clarified that these people were black slave traders. All these children were their slaves. The girl's face turned white again with horror and fear when she heard a man's voice from the darkness. Another man came out to meet them, who resembled the injured men. A scary, withered-looking man took off his black hood. With a grin on his face, he said that it was a pleasure to meet His Highness the Wise Prince. Noah apparently didn't like the man, but he wanted to know his identity. The man's eyes widened in horror, and he said that he was a man who made a living from such children. For some reason he didn't want to give his name, but he would like to hear the reason. The man confessed that he was the property of His Highness the First Prince. In the end, it turned out that this terrible man was the property of His Highness the First Prince. Noah asked if it really belonged to the First Prince. The man smiled with his toothless mouth and said that everything was correct. Apparently, he really knew the First Prince. Noah looked around and noticed that there were too many people here. It was obvious that this man was really planning something terrible, and his malicious, insane grin never left his face. The hero asked his brother Henry if he knew this man. Henry replied with an indifferent face that he did not know him. The boy told the man that his brother didn't know him, and he didn't know who he was either. The man was about to say something, but Noah had already activated his magic bracelet. The stranger looked into the boy's eyes and felt a sharp attack. The man's body fell to the ground. Henry was shocked when he saw his brother's terrible strength. Noah didn't understand how this man dared to pretend to be the First Prince's servant. If the others could believe it, then he and his brother certainly wouldn't believe it. The passers-by assumed that he was a fake. They were curious to know who Noah and Henry were. One of the guys said that he knew the prince who was Alice's patron. This meant that those two were fakes. Noah smiled and turned silently to his servants. He ordered that they be seized and taken to the First Prince's residence. He had to be informed that they had used the first brother's name in public. The hero looked at the children, who continued to stare at him in surprise. Noah ordered his servants to take the children to his residence for a time, where they could then listen to them later. Henry got out of his carriage and exclaimed to Noah that it was amazing. Henry noticed that Noah had done a good job of it. Sitting down, Noah was glad that he had succeeded. There was nothing he could do about it. It was under his older brother's control, and if Noah did anything to it, his brother might resent it. The truth was, the man was a black market slaver, and it would be best to assume it was a fake and leave it to his brother. Henry was surprised by Noah's way of thinking, but an approving smile appeared on his face. He exclaimed that his brother's actions were always unexpected and surprising. Late in the evening, Noah sat down at the table for dinner. He picked up a fork and knife and cut his piece of steak. Opposite him, at a large table with candles, sat Henry. During dinner, a servant approached His Highness and whispered something in his ear. Noah's face seemed somewhat puzzled. The boy understood everything and let his servant go. Henry did not ask Noah any questions yet. Noah started talking about the First Prince and the residence of Gilbert's brother. In that case, Henry asked Noah a question and asked what he had been told. It was good that they caught him. After interrogating him, Noah learned that the man had been doing business under his name. Noah was about to take him to court, but he committed suicide when Noah took his eyes off him. Henry was at a loss for words about the situation and only said that he understood everything. The man, in Noah's opinion, was a treasure. They knew each other with his brother, and that they had the same thought in their heads. The idea of a lizard without a tail was stuck in their heads. The slave trader probably did what his older brother told him to do. Gilbert had always been like that, in Henry's opinion. He had always done things like that, like owning a shop and buying estates. Noah thought there was nothing he could do about it. Henry didn't understand what Noah meant. According to Noah, Brother Gilbert was the first prince, but he was also the son of a concubine, and because of this, he cannot become the crown prince. He tried to vent his frustration and was only looking for a replacement because he could not gain power over the empire. The alternative was business and estates. Henry was amazed that Noah even knew this and told his brother that he was amazing. Noah thought that could be understood with a little thought. But Henry smiled and said that was not the case. Henry said the food was bad, but Noah saved him a little. After dinner, Noah met with the children who had been enslaved. The children knelt before the prince and waited for his orders. The guy said he had already taken care of it and reassured them that they would not be sold in the future. Now the children were free. The children could not believe his words and stared at the prince in surprise. Apparently, this did not make them very happy. The children looked at each other in confusion, and Noah began to understand what was going on. If he understood correctly, the children had nowhere to go. The girl who had asked for help earlier confirmed his words. One of the children said he was sold for this year's paddy. The girl was sold to pay for her mother's funeral, and someone else was sold to reduce the number of mouths to feed. The prince realized that they all had nowhere to go back to. They could be sold again if they returned. The faces of these children were unhappy. Noah had an idea and called out to his servant Dylan. He said that he would take these children to himself and asked to give them a place to sleep and work. If any of them were smart, they could study. Dylan bowed and carried out the prince's order. The girls stared at the prince in shock and asked if he really wanted to buy them. Noah bowed down to the girl and said with a smile that it was not a purchase. So if they wanted to leave, they could do so. However, Noah had one condition. He told the children that he would never take back a man who had once left. This meant that he would not tolerate traitors here. Judging by the girl's surprised face, the hero assumed that it was too difficult for them. Dylan explained to the children that they just had to try their best not to betray His Highness. He asked them to hurry up and thank the prince for his help. The children obediently bowed and thanked Noah. After that, Dylan led the children out of the royal room, and Noah watched them go with a smile on his face. When everything was over, the hero asked to call a maid named Evelyn to him. The girl approached the prince and asked if he had really summoned her. Noah handed her an envelope and said that he had brought it for her. The girl looked at the envelope questioningly and asked what it was. The boy replied that it was a resignation. She was now the governor of a small land in Almeria. The maid tried to comprehend this for a while. With this letter, she was now an official person. The land given by His Majesty was huge, so it was possible to send a governor to rule in the name of His Highness. It was possible to ensure a great career growth from a maid to a governor. Noah had been watching the maid for years. Evelyn was the smartest maid he had, and he thought it would be a waste of time for her to just serve the guests. Evelyn was at a loss for words and fell to her knees. She exclaimed that instead of moving forward, she wanted to serve her master more. The hero knew this very well, but she needed to grow. If she succeeded, it would be easier for him to keep an eye on everyone. Evelyn's eyes sparkled, but they reflected only melancholy. The guy smiled and asked her to go and work for him. Evelyn understood everything and agreed with him. She clutched the envelope to her chest and hurried toward the exit. Charlie, who was standing not far from Noah, said quietly that it was amazing. Noah didn't understand what she meant. Charlie was amazed at how His Highness the First Prince used his servants. The hero reminded Charlie that she could not say such things. The girl agreed with him, and bowing low, exclaimed that she was sorry. But she still thought it was amazing. Later, Noah appeared in His Majesty's throne room, where he had an audience with the king. The king had already heard that Noah had defended Gilbert's honor. Apparently, Brother Gilbert had already reported it. Noah replied that it was just a coincidence. There was nothing wrong with not hiding it. The king said there were those who did not use it. He wanted to know what their guilt was as a black slave trader. The boy replied that unregistered human trafficking was punishable by amputation of the dominant arm, and accomplices were given a military sentence. The king wanted to check with the first chancellor whether this was really so. The chancellor replied that His Highness had spoken the truth. The king asked if there were any injuries. He heard that someone had attacked Noah, but fortunately he had been able to dodge. The king smiled and admitted that if it were him, he would have been beaten to death while he was still thinking about whether to reveal himself or not. If that happened, it would be a crime of great blasphemy punishable by death. Noah exclaimed that he had not thought so at all. Under the laws of the empire, the crime of contempt did not apply to those who did not know the identity of His Majesty. In other words, blasphemy did not apply until he revealed his identity. In this case, it would simply be assault causing bodily harm. Everyone who was in the hall with the king opened their mouths in amazement. Everyone began to quietly discuss it. Noah suggested that he had said too much. It would be better to say that there was disrespect here, not blasphemy. Disrespect was a more delicate topic. The hero had to tell the truth, because it was not right to hit the Chancellor in the face like that. He thought he should apologize, but the king suddenly laughed. The king turned to the first Chancellor and suggested that he had won the bet. The Chancellor confirmed this and said that he had seen it for himself. The boy was completely confused and did not understand what the king meant. The king admitted that he had made a bet with the first Chancellor whether he could speak only in accordance with the law. Noah didn't understand why they needed this test. The king had long known that Noah was very strict when it came to the law and decided to make sure of it. In that case, in the name of the emperor, the king was going to appoint Noah Ararat as Minister of Justice. Everyone present was shocked when they heard this from the king himself. Noah thought that he had been answering the questions as usual, but now everything was different. Now he has been appointed Minister of Justice. Soon the carriage brought Noah to a large building. Huge gates opened in front of the guy's face. The Ministry of Justice already knew that His Highness the Wise Prince would be coming to them. They were already waiting for him and bowed to their new minister. The guy went into his office, where he settled comfortably in a chair at the table. A dark-haired guy approached him and introduced himself as Vinny Aussie. He was the Deputy Minister of Justice. Noah realized that he was the second most important person. At that age, this position was a good career move. Noah asked Vinny what he was supposed to do at the Justice Department, and asked for a briefing. The deputy explained that the Ministry of Justice organized courts throughout the empire and was the place where a trial could be held. Usually, the Ministry of Justice or His Majesty himself would try those guilty of serious crimes, such as rebellion. In other words, it was a place of sorts. Noah asked Vinny if he ever judged people personally. The guy replied that he did it in some cases. The guy wanted to know how many bribes he had already taken. Upon hearing this question, Vinny turned pale and said that he had taken absolutely nothing. The hero said that he had no intention of continuing this, and wanted to know the whole truth. He was going to forget everything Winnie had said as soon as they left this room. This was exactly what Winnie had expected from His Highness the Wise Prince. The boy admitted that he did not take much, only a few hundred ren a year. This was because Vinny was very careful. Others, who were not so careful, took 10 times more. The prince wanted to hear about his obligations. Vinny didn't take murder cases, but the hero didn't understand why. The guy replied that they could be solved easily. The case could also come down to revenge, and that was irreparable. He only took cases that could go either way. Noah took a pen and paper and wrote something on it. After that, he handed the paper to the deputy. Noah assumed that he took 500 ren a year, and he would give him 10 times that amount. The amount would be 5,000 ren, so Winnie had to stop doing this while Noah was here. The hero wanted to live up to His Majesty's expectations, so he asked Winnie for help. Having received a bribe, even if it was small, it was still some help for Vinny. Vinny understood why His Majesty gave him the title of Wise Man and appointed him Minister of Justice. Vinny handed the paper back and said he didn't need the extra money and promised not to take any more bribes. He asked to just let him work for His Highness. In a normal situation, the hero would doubt his sincerity. Looking at his skill panel, Noah noticed that his MP and intelligence and status plus had increased. At that moment, he understood everything. In the middle of the night sky, among the bright street lights, an orchestra began to play, and one of the maids carried delicious food to one of the tables. This entire luxurious banquet took place at the residence of the 8th Prince Oscar. The hero thanked Oscar for allowing them to celebrate it in such a grand manner. Oscar was also happy about it. The second person as a prince who had been appointed minister during His Majesty's reign for over 50 years. Since it was Noah, they had to celebrate it. However, Oscar noticed that his younger brother was puzzled by something. He assumed that Noah was not happy and asked him a question. Noah was simply curious as to why His Majesty had suddenly appointed the Imperial princes as ministers one after another. Oscar smiled and thought that Noah was just being nice. The Minister of War was his brother Henry, and he was appointed because of the rebellion that had taken place in Noah's land of Almeria, and the Minister of Justice was Noah. You could say that it was because he was his patron. Oscar noticed that something was definitely bothering Noah. As Oscar already knew, the empire had a history of near collapse. After that, there was a history of major changes in the imperial system. Everyone except the crown prince, who studied political issues in order to inherit the throne, was incompetent, so the empire fell into decline. Because of this, the empire now granted the prince the title of prince, and gave him feudal land to gain experience in governance. Oscar agreed with Noah's words. This situation where ministers are appointed one after another without such training. Noah thought that this could be a hint and asked Oscar's opinion. Oscar was shocked by his younger brother's logic. Suddenly Oscar jumped to his feet so quickly that his chair wobbled and fell to the ground. Everyone around their table immediately became silent and stopped. Even the musicians who were playing the violin fell silent and stared at Oscar in surprise. Oscar couldn't believe it. He assumed there might have been a change. Noah wasn't sure. As long as he was simply loved, there would be no problem. Just then, a servant ran up to Oscar with news. Oscar was shocked by the news that was approached to him. He told Noah that it was amazing, because everything happened just as Noah said. He had just acquired some information. It turns out that His Majesty is going to appoint Oscar as Minister of Finance at tomorrow morning's meeting. Oscar's appointment as minister was clearly beyond the bounds of love for Noah. Oscar raised his glass to Noah with a smile. He raised the glass above his head and offered him a drink. The king's servant came to him and said that they had captured 167 people, including Keats. His Majesty would be forced to abdicate, and then the crown prince would take the throne. All this was according to previous information. The king raised his head to the bright crescent moon and said that after 50 years of reign he could not endure. For 45 years he had also been crown prince. The servant also asked to pay attention that there was no evidence of the crown prince's involvement, and none could be found. The king knew this, so he was not going to do anything to Albert. He ordered the execution of Keats and be done with it. The king wondered what had happened to the leak of Oscar's appointment letter. The man had sent it to an officer who was constantly receiving money from His Highness. Most likely, His Highness already suspected this. The king was amazed that His Highness Noah was already there. This meant that Noah already knew the king's intentions. The report they received said exactly that. The king chuckled and said that he was impressed as always. In the king's opinion, Gilbert was no good. His Majesty asked the question and asked who would be his successor. Henry, Oscar, and Noah were suitable for this role. But whoever it was, the king hoped that he would overcome the trials he had prepared. The Deputy Minister of Justice, named Vinny, provided the hero with a report on paper. He explained that here were the main and secondary criminals of this uprising. The hero carefully studied the document and the lists in it. As far as he understood, people from the Crown Prince's entourage were recorded here. All these names were familiar to him. There was the Crown Prince's confidant, his former tutor, and a knight. It could only be considered one thing. This was probably a rebellion by the Crown Prince's faction. Worried, Vinny asked the hero what they should do. As soon as Noah looked up at Winnie lowered his head guiltily. Noah thought it was a natural reaction, regardless of whether the Crown Prince was involved or not. In the Imperial law, if an Imperial family broke the law, there was a clause that allowed them to receive a lighter punishment. The only exception was rebellion. If a member of the Imperial family was involved in a rebellion, the punishment was beheading. Even in the case of ordinary crimes, if one knew about the crime, one could not report it. But if the Crown Prince knew about the rebellion and did not report it, he would be sentenced to death. That was the whole problem. Treason against the Crown Prince was punishable by death. But then a terrible scandal would have arisen, and the empire itself could have been shaken. Noah thought for a moment, and asked Winnie if His Majesty had said anything to him. Winnie agreed and said that according to the king, those who did this would be punished. The hero wanted to make sure that the king said only that, but Winnie did not understand what he meant. Apparently, His Majesty had no intention of interfering. In that case, they would only execute those on that list. The rebellion didn't even need to be acknowledged. Vinny agreed with Noah's words. Therefore, they had to execute everyone immediately. Vinny was impressed by the guy's decision and bowed to him. There are two types of death penalty depending on the time of execution. The execution was immediate and collective, which was carried out once a year. If a collective execution could be achieved, it could lead to freedom. If there were no mitigating circumstances, the execution would be carried out immediately. His Majesty clearly did not want to involve the Crown Prince, so the hero had to do it. Vinny asked where they were going next. Noah stood up from his chair and said they were going to have an audience with His Majesty just in case. Soon Noah arrived in the royal hall to see the king. The king was glad to see Noah there. Before the start, Noah knelt down and bowed before the king. The king wondered why Noah had come here, and the boy replied that he had come here to ask questions about the rebellion. The king understood everything and asked what their punishment was. The hero replied that, according to Imperial law, the main criminal would be sentenced to beheading, and the rest would be sentenced to death. Moreover, it was decided to execute them all on the same day. The hero looked up at the king to see his reaction. The king smiled and praised the boy for his good work. He went up to his servant Cruz and called out to him. He told Cruz that Noah had done a good job, so his allowance would be increased by 1,000 ren a year. A judgment of this kind was not a sufficient achievement to justify the addition. However, it was the kind of message from His Majesty. In other words, he did not want to involve the crown prince. The king lowered himself to Noah and placed his hands on his shoulders. This was exactly what he expected from Noah. He told the boy that he had done a great job. The king expected Noah to continue doing good work. Noah's carriage soon set off back on the road. After a while, the boy returned to the Ministry of Justice, but what he saw there shocked him. Right at the entrance, Noah noticed wounded people and hurried to them. He asked one of the soldiers about what had happened. The beaten man told His Highness that there were uninvited guests. Noah didn't expect that there would be such people here. The man replied that they had already killed several of their men and were still inside. The hero said that if that was true, he should go to the Ministry of War and tell his brother about it. But then Noah decided not to do that. It could be problematic if they made a big mistake. In that case, the boy asked to gather everyone here. He ordered not to let anyone in except him, even if it was the prince. Noah grabbed his shining leviathan and ran into the building. The hero quickly ran through the corridors to the next doors. Opening the first doors, he saw a man with a sword attacking. The intruder had managed to deal with several workers and was just dealing with one of the last survivors. He swung his sword to deliver the final blow. Just at that moment, Noah came to the rescue. The hero blocked the enemy's blow with his sword. He turned the enemy's sword aside and inflicted multiple wounds on his arms and legs. The wounded enemy exclaimed that Noah was naive. He wanted to repeat it again, but he bit his tongue. The intruder noticed the boy's magic ring, around which the letters were shining. A sparkling thread, like a thunder whip, appeared in the unknown man's teeth. This whip did not allow him to close his mouth. The hero understood that all this was done for the sake of suicide. Following this man, 3 more appeared. At the same time, they pounced on their target. Noah stood patiently in place and waited until they were as close as possible. He waited for the moment when the enemies would swing their swords at him. The guy swung his blade and simultaneously parried all 3 blows from all sides. His precise strikes caused the enemy's sword to change direction and wound his own ally. The wounded intruders lost their vigilance, and Noah, meanwhile, managed to jump over their heads. He delivered a few more slashes with the Leviathan. He turned his attention to his magic ring, which glowed and activated at his command. Noah closed the mouths of the offenders with a magic whip, just as he did with the first man. Just as the battle was ending, a frightened Vinny ran up to Noah. He called out to His Highness, and noticed that the prince had apparently overcome these men. He found this surprising. He reported that there were more than 20 victims among the guards. Moreover, the rebels were all killed. At first, I was surprised, but he said nothing about it. He wanted to make sure he heard all the news. Vinny replied that that was all. The hero looked at their opponents. In other words, these 4 people belonged to the crown prince. The crown prince went to great lengths to shut up the mouths of Noah. Concerned, Vinny asked His Highness what they would do. But Noah already knew what he would do. Suddenly the boy turned the Leviathan towards himself, and inflicted a deep wound near the ribs. Vinny was afraid for His Highness, and called out to him. Noah clenched his teeth in sharp pain. Vinny didn't expect Noah to suddenly stab himself with his own sword. The deputy's face turned pale with fear when he saw the pool of blood under the hero's feet. Unable to bear the pain, Noah fell to his knees, his face covered in beads of sweat. The hero clutched his wound and said that these 4 people had attacked him and asked what the harshest sentence would be for seriously injuring the prince. Shocked, Vinny said that they were immediately threatened with the death penalty. In that case, the guy ordered to do it immediately, and Vinny agreed. After this, the maids and the doctor took care of the prince's wounds and laid him on a soft pillow. At that moment, Winnie came into their room and said that the order had been carried out. The prince, still pale, looked at Vinny and nodded approvingly. Concerned about the prince, Winnie told His Highness that everything had happened as expected. The hero told him that this was the end of the matter and sighed with relief. Noah knew that if they made one wrong decision, the country would be in turmoil. After this incident, the hero came to the king for an audience. He wanted to bow to him, but the king asked him not to do so because he had a wound. The king noticed that Noah often came to him and inquired about the state of his wound. Noah assured him that there was nothing to worry about. And yet the king doubted that such a powerful killer could contact them who could injure such a strong man as Noah. After all, Noah didn't think he could hide it from His Majesty. He thought the king would also punish him for cutting his belly. So Noah had been thinking about the scenario all last night. He wanted to talk about power. Noah thought that it was not just a matter of swordsmanship. Regardless of skill, any master could be subject to mental attack. The king understood perfectly well what his son was talking about. He admitted that Noah was a good son, whom he was not ashamed to show to anyone. It seemed that the king correctly understood that Noah had harmed himself by thinking about different things. The king said that if everyone were like him, it would be a great help to him. The king thought Noah knew something else. Noah wondered what the king meant. The king spoke of the so-called virtuous emperors, 9 out of 10 of whom ruined themselves and their reputations. When he spoke of reputation, he must have been referring to the crown prince's betrayal. It was not flattery or anything, but His Majesty was a good ruler. It could be said that he led the empire to a golden age that had never been seen before in its history. In the histories of future generations, he would undoubtedly be described as a great ruler. And yet the uprising could have been successful. Then everything would have been different. The hero assumed that the crown prince would have forced him to abdicate, and he would have been elevated to the rank of supreme emperor. In the future, he would be written about as the worst emperor, a man who could not even control his son. So the king would have ruined his reputation, and that would have been the end of it. Most likely, His Majesty no longer trusted the crown prince. The reason why he did not do anything about it right now is because disinheriting the crown prince would also destroy his legacy to some extent. There was no evidence yet, so Noah was going to continue according to the script. Noah was afraid that he would have a request to His Majesty. The king was interested in this and asked what he needed. Noah reminded that he was Henry's brother and Oscar's brother, and His Majesty had appointed all 3 of them as ministers. This was the first time they had all been involved in something like this, and Noah was afraid that they might have made mistakes. So Noah thought they needed someone else to organize them. The king assumed that Noah would like to become the first vizier, but he was wrong. The hero had his own proposal as to who could be appointed. He proposed appointing one of the princes as prime minister. The king was surprised by this proposal. Noah confirmed his words and said that the prime minister will be the one in charge of everything. He will unite the 3 princes. Noah would like the crown prince to take on this role. A slightly displeased grimace appeared on the king's face. It seemed that he was having a hard time making such a decision. For Noah, this was a natural reaction to his proposal. The hero explained that making them all organizers in various ministries would help them stop the crown prince. The crown prince will cease to act on behalf of His Majesty. The final decision will be up to His Majesty. Besides, they will report to him after they have discussed the matter, so there will be no additional burden on His Majesty. The king asked about the consequences of the prime minister's refusal. He assumed that the prime minister would not obey them. To prevent this from happening, he would like each of the princes to have a right of appeal. If they feel they should, they could appeal directly to His Majesty, without going through the prime minister. The king was silent for a moment, pondering Noah's words. His expression seemed surprised, and Noah's proposal was shocking to him. A confident smile appeared on Noah's face. It seemed to him that his true intentions were understood by the king. The essence of this proposal was to elevate the crown prince to the rank of an authority figure, but this would not give any power. He would rule them, but the final word would be His Majesty's. If he did not agree with them, they could skip him and talk to His Majesty directly. In other words, the office of Prime Minister was simply an office that did not matter whether it existed or not. The king agreed and said that this would be best. The king admitted that it was good advice and promised to listen to it. In response, he bowed to His Majesty. The king stood up from his throne and extended his hand to Noah. He stroked his head. Still, the king regretted that Noah had not been born a little earlier. Noah was pleased to hear these words. Along with the smile, a slight blush appeared on his cheeks. The king cleared his throat and walked back to his seat. He now had to reward Noah, he said, but money would be too dull a reward. In that case, he called Cruz over and asked him to go with them to the treasury. The king looked at the hero's hand where the ring was. His Majesty said that undoubtedly this ring was found by Noah. He invited the boy to go into the castle's treasury. He wanted to see how Noah reasoned. Reaching the end of the corridor, Cruz opened the doors and the room shone with the golden light of jewelry. The room was simply enormous. It contained a variety of valuables, from small items to large shelves and statues. The king asked Noah to choose one thing that he liked. The king watched with a smile as Noah walked into the middle of the room and stopped. He extended his hand, which had his magic bracelet on it, and activated it. Thanks to the object, he saw the entire room as if in a negative. The hero noticed a sparkling light that emanated from near the large vases. He headed towards the light and noticed a painted, sparkling box on the chest of drawers. He took the shining box in his hands and slowly opened it. There was another ring in the small painted box. Noah picked up the box and told the king that he would like to take it. The king nodded his head in approval. He was impressed that the hero chose Ruthia without hesitation, but that was to be expected. Noah looked at the ring in the light in surprise and repeated its name. This ring had its own name, Russia. As soon as the hero put the ring on his second thumb, the ring began to glow with a bright flame. Noah glanced at his status window, which soon changed. Perhaps because his fire was initially very low, his fire skill immediately rose to level C. This meant that the rudium ring had the power of fire. The king knew that Noah had seen through all of this. It seemed that the ring had impressive power. The king assumed that Noah wanted to try it out and suggested going outside. He turned to Cruz and asked him to prepare everything. But the hero told His Majesty that there was no need for that. The king grinned and suggested that the boy had another idea. The hero adjusted his ring on his finger and said that he had a better idea. Together with His Majesty, Noah went out into the backyard of the mansion. As a reward from His Majesty, the boy received a Russia, which has the attribute of fire. Russia added a plus to his status and had the will of a Leviathan. It was also possible to use only the power of the ring. With these thoughts, Noah activated the magic ring on his finger. The flames from the ring grew larger and larger until they engulfed everything in the area. Soon the young man's entire body was covered in hellish flames, but he did not even move. The king was seriously scared for Noah and called out to him. Before he could run up to the guy, Noah calmed him down and said that everything was fine. The shocked king noticed the blade of the Leviathan, which appeared in a cloud of fire. The boy raised the sword in front of him and said that fire and water cancelled each other out. If they are evenly matched, they will drown each other out, but if one of them is clearly superior to the other, the effect will drop to almost zero. This is exactly what was happening before their eyes. The shocked king looked at the molten ground beneath Noah's feet. Despite the fact that it was melting, Noah stood unwaveringly on it. Moreover, the king did not feel any heat at all. To make sure of this, he extended his hand to the flame. The king noticed that the melting was only occurring within the circle's range. Noah confirmed this and said that he used the Leviathan sword to control the heat output. The king was so impressed by this that he exclaimed to the boy that it was simply amazing. When the hero had cleared out all the flames in the area, he stood on a small round island of land, around which a moat had formed. Noah put out the flame and looked at His Majesty with a smile. The king's eyes sparkled with delight. He exclaimed that Noah was able to completely control the ring, which was very impressive. Ruthia turned out to be a real gift for Noah. The king invited him to continue working hard for the benefit of the empire. Noah agreed with His Majesty. After a while, the king and Noah returned to his spacious office. His Majesty sat back down at his desk. The king had one more thing he wanted to hear Noah's opinion on. Noah was immediately interested in the king's proposal. His Majesty handed the boy a paper and he carefully read it. This report dealt with the younger brother of His Majesty Graham Ararat and also his uncle. It was stated that he had volunteered to pay a fine of 30,000 ren. Noah asked His Majesty what Uncle Graham had done. Graham's son was the king's nephew. This nephew had been outrageous and had killed a drunken man with whom he had quarreled. Noah initially tried to understand what was happening. The king said that he had accused him of a crime, and Graham himself suggested imposing a fine for not keeping an eye on his son. According to the laws of the empire, Uncle Graham was innocent. Just as a child is not obligated to pay off a parent's debt, so a child's crime does not apply to the parents. The king had told Graham all this before, but Graham was still afraid. Most likely, he wanted to buy peace of mind by paying this fine. The hero read the paper carefully again. 30,000 ren was a huge sum. The average monthly income of an adult male was only 10 ren. The king wanted to know the opinion of Noah. Noah thought they should give it up. To the king, it sounded like a no-lose proposition. According to Noah, they couldn't fine an innocent man, even if he wanted to. In that case, the king suggested amending the self-payment law. Their treasury was in a state of chronic danger. Saving people from natural disasters and suppressing uprisings required money. That's why everyone wanted to have extra income. Noah understood the king's feelings. He told the king that if they set a precedent like that, people would think he was innocent if he paid the money. If that happened, then the barrier to crime would be lowered. The king agreed and said that in that case the restraining law would die. Moreover, most of the people who would use it were merchants, nobles, and officials. This could lead to political corruption. Noah handed the paper back to the king and said that the lack of a treasury was a serious problem, but it must be replenished with legal funds. The king agreed with Noah's words. He told the boy that he had given him good advice. His Majesty also thought that they should have consulted Oscar. The king signed the paper and placed the royal seal on the signature. It was an official document of the emperor, or rather an imperial decree. The king handed this order into Noah's hands. The decree began with praise for the 13th prince's wisdom and ended with Noah being appointed as an advisor to the prime minister. The prime minister had advised Noah to appoint him, and he was now his advisor. The king assumed that the hero might not like this honorable position, but that was not the issue. It was about the offer. The king did not understand what exactly Noah was talking about. There was no question of paying while avoiding sin. The hero asked about allowing him to pay for the honor. The king stared at the boy in surprise, not understanding what he meant. Noah suggested that they give the honorary title of knight to anyone who donated 1,000 ren to the treasury, and so on. When a person has a certain amount of money more than he can spend on himself, he will seek honors rather than increasing this amount. They use the money they could spend on themselves to educate talented but disadvantaged people to increase their fame as nobles. This is one of the reasons why aristocrats become patrons of different people. The king understood what Noah was talking about. However, all that can be bought is honor. An honorary knight will never become a knight, and will not be able to move on to real power. Instead, they would receive the reward from His Majesty in person. The king assumed that was all there was to the honorary title of knight. Noah agreed with His Majesty. The king simply beamed with delight and exclaimed to Noah that this was a great idea. His Majesty called Cruz and ordered him to inform Oscar immediately. Noah looked questioningly at His Majesty. He wanted to ask about something. Noah remembered that he had some unfinished business at the Justice Department, and wanted to ask him for permission to leave. The king was surprised by such a request. The guy thought to himself that this was all. As with everything else, it was not good to overdo it. Noah thought that if he stayed here, he might end up in Oscar's territory. So he had to leave with a suitable excuse before Oscar arrived. The king smiled and told Noah that he was quite a clever child. His Majesty, of course, dismissed Noah and thanked him for his time. The next day, Noah noticed a crowd of people looking at something with interest in their backyard. Mr. SSS smiled at the boy and said that everyone was surprised by what His Highness had done. He usually met them when he came to the Imperial Palace. SSS was an ordinary eunuch. The earth melted into a donut shape and everyone was wondering how it happened. Noah smiled and agreed with his words. Everyone was amazed by the strength of His Highness. Some even fell into the hole trying to dig up the earth, and someone even broke their leg. The boy said that it was so and handed the eunuch a bag of coins. SSS took the bag with a surprised face, and Noah told him that it was for the treatment of the workers. SSS thanked Noah for his help. Everyone said that His Highness was very kind to those under his command. He thought that His Highness would probably marry soon. The number of applicants for his service was growing and exceeded hundreds. SSS said that the number of eunuchs would increase to 1,000 at this rate. It was said that His Highness was the most popular of His Majesty's children. This was a politically sensitive topic that could become too broad. Noah became curious about what the eunuch was holding in his hands and asked him a question. SSS looked at his box with satisfaction. He said he brought it for His Highness the 16th Prince. He seemed to enjoy making the bugs fight. Noah's younger brother, the 16th Prince, turned 3 this year. Since he is a prince, he is given a strict education, but at the same time, there are many children who ask the eunuchs to give them these soft toys. Noah began to pack his things into the carriage, and one of the maids asked where they were going. The boy replied that they were going to the mansion. Looking out the window, Noah thought about battles and bugs. The hero looked at his rings, asking them if they could do it. The maid looked questioningly at Noah, who lowered his head somewhere. Meanwhile, the hero connected the ring of armor with the Leviathan and with the Ruthia. Bright flashes of light appeared around Noah. With the help of the rings, he was able to create 2 different small creatures. The first creature held the Leviathan's sword, and the other creature looked like a man in fiery armor. On the prince's orders, the 2 began to attack each other. The knight in light armor swung his sword to strike, and the fire knight parried it with his flaming fist. The blows continued to rain down on the man in the fiery armor. The boy noticed the movements of the little Leviathan. They were similar to the movements when he swung his sword. Noah assumed that he could move like that when he grew up. The hero had no doubt that with the power of Ruthia he too would be able to move like that. Noah watched the exciting battle of the little people with interest. It was fun for him to learn by watching them fight. The difference between them was obvious. The maid who spied on them from outside exclaimed that it was amazing. Noah smiled and agreed with her words. The hero took his Leviathan in his hands and tried to reproduce the same movement. After doing it as well, Noah noticed that it was very effective. The maid looked at the decorations inside the carriage in surprise. She found it surprising that the sword had passed by without leaving any cuts. The boy took a closer look and said that there were cuts on it. He took one of the small rubies in his hands and showed it to the maid. The young maid was delighted and could not take her eyes off the little stone. The hero decided to hang it back. The decoration looked as if it had never been touched. The maid was surprised that he didn't fall. She asked Noah about it. The guy showed her the smooth surface of the decoration. If you cut it perfectly, then when you put it back, it will hold perfectly. The maid was delighted that Noah could do even that. Combining with the ring of armor, Noah had a simulated battle. Now they could practice the techniques that both of them possessed. At this moment, the hero noticed on his panel that his level had risen to the 2nd. Noah found this quite surprising. His health also went up a whole level. Noah looked at his rings in shock, not believing his eyes. Later, the hero and Zoe went to a large gazebo in the backyard. There Noah showed her a battle between 2 little people. This fight was between a mini version of Leviathan and Lucifer. Leviathan had 10 wins and 0 losses. Noah looked at the statistics and noticed that he was improving. Some of his stats have risen from F to E rank, and his level has increased by 1 more point. The guy called out to Zoe. He thought that she had been serving for 6 years already. Zoe had tried to learn many abilities to repay him. One of her abilities was status checking. Some stats didn't change at all. The plus after the rank meant that they were added to his strength. Zoe thought it was amazing, because the hero actually raised his level without any battles. She had never seen anything like that. The hero replied that it was the result of his puppets fighting each other. It turned out that he had leveled up because they were constantly fighting each other. It was more difficult. The experience gained from battle decreased the more times Noah fought the same enemy. It only took 1 battle to get to level 2, but it took 10 to get to level 3. Zoya understood what he meant. With the current opponent, it would take 100 battles to level up. There shouldn't be any problems if they continue to fight hard. During their conversation, the fiery Lucifer punched the Leviathan. Noah smiled and said that he understood something else thanks to this. Zoe looked at Noah questioningly. The hero wanted something unusual, like Leviathan and Lucifer. If he had to make them fight 100 times, it would only take 200 of them to achieve his goal. Zoe exclaimed that it was indeed so. Having this third-person view was really handy because it gave him good ideas for using their powers. Lucifer hated losing, and the Leviathan was twice as big. But no matter how close he was to defeat, he was gaining strength again. Lucifer attacked the Leviathan again, but the armored puppet deftly dodged to the side. This level was not enough to break through the ability. Lucifer deliberately made himself unbalanced. But Noah was surprised by how Lucifer did not give up. His fire grew, and soon his attack reached Leviathan. Noah told Lucifer that it was impressive. It was like he was born to fight better. Noah's fire status with a plus rose, and the guy was happy about it. This meant that Lucifer had improved. Suddenly Noah heard someone clapping their hands behind him and turned around. It turned out that standing behind him was his brother Henry, the fourth prince and the Imperial household's minister for military affairs. His maid stood next to his brother. Henry said that Noah was more impressive here, being able to make this ring as powerful as it is. The hero approached his brother and suggested that he had already seen everything. Henry replied that he had seen little, but it was interesting. Henry came here to tell his brother that the monster nest had finally appeared. A prince of the royal family must have the emperor's blessing to avoid imminent death, otherwise he would not be able to fight on the battlefield. But this was not always possible, and in order to prevent accidents during the first descent, the government sometimes prepares safe hunting grounds that have been changed in advance. And in this way, the nest of monsters is handed over to the Minister of War. According to Henry, His Majesty's permission had been obtained, so they could tell fortunes about the future of their war. Noah did not understand what his brother meant. Henry meant it. With these words, he placed a small ornate box on the table in front of his younger brother. This box was known as a fortune teller. When a person opened it, it would tell them what they needed at that moment. In this way, they would know how many people Noah needed for the first battle. Too many soldiers accompanying him into battle would be a stain on his reputation. But if he took only a few, he would be in mortal danger. That was why they counted the number of soldiers needed for battle. The hero asked his brother what he needed to do. Henry asked him to open the box, and the answer should be inside. Noah agreed with his brother and took the box, after which he carefully opened it. As soon as he opened the box, it began to shine with a bright light. The subject gave him a small piece of paper. The boy grabbed the piece of paper in his hands, and Henry asked what was written on it. A bright number 1 was shining on the piece of paper. Henry was very surprised at first. This meant that he was going on a mission alone. Henry exclaimed that Noah was simply amazing. It was already night outside, but Noah's puppets were still fighting with each other. While the boy was watching their fight, a maid came into his room and told the master that a guest was waiting for him. Noah wondered who could have come to him at night. The girl replied that there was a messenger of His Majesty, and he came with a royal decree. The hero understood everything and offered to go to him right away. The fourth prince's chief assistant, Rice Cake, came to Noah. Noah bowed before Rice and said that he was listening to him attentively. There was an awkward pause between Rice and Noah as the hero knelt down in front of the man and bowed his head. As is known, the messenger who brought the king's decree was his representative. All etiquette had to be observed, and therefore no one could interfere with the process of transmitting the order. Rice reported that the first battle of Noah Ararat, the son of the king, would be postponed and asked to wait for the next order. After this message, to Noah's surprise, Rice himself knelt before Noah and bowed to him. He told Rice that they had not seen His Highness for a long time. The hero suggested that here he could feel at home with his brother Henry. Sometimes royal families nominated their own slaves, servants, and other household members as their commanders. Rice was one of them with noble roots, which gave him the right to be called the heir. Compared to Rice's status, even the status of Evelyn, whom he appointed as his deputy, was incomparable. But the most important thing was something else. Rice had the status of both a representative of the state and a servant of the royal family. And now he served not only his brother Henry, but also Noah. So immediately after the decree was delivered, he was obliged to fall on one knee and bow to it. After all the formalities, the hero sat down on the sofa, and the Rice stood opposite the prince. Noah wanted to know why his battle was postponed. Rice replied that it was only because of His Highness's authority, but the hero did not understand what he meant. When Henry reported the results of the prediction, His Highness was extremely pleased. Since this was the case, they had to make a big deal out of it, so they decided to postpone it. The hero understood everything. People, of course, loved spectacles. And if the main character was a member of the royal family, then everyone definitely wanted to see it. Henry thought it was unheard of for someone like Noah to fight alone. Now His Majesty was seriously discussing with Henry and His Highness the Eighth how to spread the glory of his greatness throughout the empire. Since this was indeed the case, Noah could afford to rest a little. Accompanied by Charlene, Noah went to the Street of Kobolds. There he and the girl walked through the shopping arcades, looking for interesting antiques. Noah went in search of the same things as the Leviathan and the fiddler, but nothing ever caught his attention. They came to the shop of the merchant from whom Noah had previously bought the rings. Noah wanted to know if he had the things he wanted. He said anything would do, like cursed dolls. The man was delighted and remembered that he had something lying around. But suddenly his decision changed, and the man said that he was lying and sinning. According to him, it was a fake and just for kids. Noah chuckled at his words. He meant that he didn't have the things he needed at the moment. The man admitted this and said he was very sorry to disappoint Noah. Noah understood and did not see anything wrong with it. He handed over a bag of 10,000 rins and said it was for him. Noah asked to contact him if the merchant found the goods he had mentioned. The merchant took the bag of coins in shock and agreed with the prince. Noah said that if he liked the goods very much, he would reward him even more generously. After that, Noah left the establishment. Noah noticed the surprised look on Shirley's face and asked her a question. Shirley was just thinking about what he had just done. He hadn't gotten anything, but he had given the merchant a whole bag of money, and 10,000 at that. Noah knew what she was talking about. If he had been in his previous life, he would have thought exactly the same. But in this life, he was an aristocrat, and he would shop accordingly. Suddenly their conversation was interrupted by a man nearby who was apparently very angry. The man rudely ordered the man to repeat what he had just said. Apparently, the man grabbed one of the traders by the collar. The frightened trader repeated that another buyer had already taken the item. The visitor was incredibly angry, because he had warned the merchant earlier that he would buy this item from him. The prince asked him not to hurry and approached the conflicting party. The visitor looked back at the prince in anger. Not knowing it was the prince, he was about to insult him, but his words were cut off mid-sentence. But as soon as everything became clear, the man immediately became kinder and greeted Noah herself. The prince was wary that this man knew him. The man asked to be excused for his tactlessness and introduced himself as Darren. He was a servant of His Highness Prince Gilbert. Darren remembered that they had already met Noah at the Imperial and Ministry. The Imperial Ministry was responsible for the royal family's foreign affairs, which also curbed the nobles' monetary appetites, preserving the national treasury. Because of their close ties to the royal family, they have a certain arrogance in relation to other ministries. The hero didn't give a damn about it. He was only interested in this man. The prince didn't understand why he was yelling at him. Darren grinned and told the little prince that he would tell him something since he was so interested in it. Noah remained silent and decided to listen to this man. Darren said that every employee of his ministry did not care about any accusations. Apart from accusations of treason, this is a law aimed at restraining other ministries and organizations. He was absolutely right about that. Frankly, Noah shouldn't have gotten into trouble. The frightened merchant and the passers-by watched the prince and Darren with concern. Darren was afraid that it would sound too rude, but he asked the guy not to interfere in his affairs. Charlie called out to Noah herself. The princes of the royal family certainly had a high status in front of the servants, but Darren was not his servant. He was his brother's servant, and also an employee of the ministry, so there was such an attitude. The prince agreed with him and understood everything perfectly, but there was one thing. Noah said that he was his brother's servant, but he did not understand why he stood there like a pillar. Darren didn't understand what he meant. Like the flight yesterday, he was obliged to kneel before him. The high position brought not only new rights, but also responsibilities. Darren tried to justify himself by saying that he had not noticed this and apologized. The prince exclaimed that it was too late to ask for mercy and ordered Shirley to act. The hero ordered to tie him up tightly, and then give him a good kicking in the ass. Darren couldn't believe his ears. He couldn't believe that Noah could do this to him, and reminded him of who he was. The prince ordered him to be silent, because he had already disgraced himself worse than ever. Shirley ran to Darren to grab him. Darren tried to hit the knight, but Shirley dodged to the side and, grabbing him by the wrist, knocked him to the ground. Shirley said that he needed to be tied up. Just then, a merchant ran up to them and asked for the rope. The girl thanked him for his help. Darren was eventually tied to a pole right on the street, where the entire public could see him. Shirley asked Noah what punishment he would give him. Noah asked for some time to think and approached the pale Darren. If any of his many subordinates had allowed themselves to behave in such a manner, he would have executed them without any mercy. Shirley understood Noah and needed the whip in her hands. Darren was ready to crash into a pillar from fear of the knight's whip. The streets soon became quite lively and loud. People suggested beating him harder so that he wouldn't dare insult their prince. After some time, Shirley returned back to Noah and said that she had executed Darren. Meanwhile, Noah was sitting on a bench and waiting for her. According to her, several police officers were coming here and it looked like they knew what had happened. It wasn't surprising, since Noah had killed such an important person. The guy asked to call them here. The police had no idea that His Highness was there. They were very sorry that something like this had happened. The guy asked the police to remove his body. If he had relatives, they were to give it to him, and if not, cremate it right away. Noah sent the second policeman to the ministry. Darren was the servant of the first prince, and got what he deserved for insulting the 13th prince. The police understood everything and hurried on their errands. Meanwhile, Shirley was waiting for more orders from the prince. Noah asked to get a pair of handcuffs somewhere. Shirley didn't understand why this was necessary, because she had already executed him. In response, Noah showed her his hand. They needed to fit his wrists, so he asked Shirley to take the smallest size. Shirley was completely confused and did not understand why Noah needed handcuffs. For some unknown reason, the prince decided to surrender. Soon the hero reached the residence of the first prince of the empire. Noah's hands were cuffed, and Shirley accompanied him. The soldier noticed His Highness the 13th prince, but what surprised him more was that the boy was in handcuffs.